All right, I'm hoping the audio works. I need feedback. It could be echoing. It could be no sound. I need feedback. Does what's a debate? Yeah, you could say that. We're good? Nice. All right, my bad. I thought I found a glitch where I'm on StreamYard right now because StreamYard is super easy. And then I was using the virtual OBS through StreamYard as my webcam. I'm like, it's gonna be dope. I don't know if I'm like lagging or anything, but so I'm like I can keep my transitions and everything, but just do it on StreamYard. So we'll figure it out. We'll have to get the intro figured out. Anyway, so tonight's stream is called Skull and Globers. You know, the usual Skull and Globers. You can see you got the bendy time over here. Little lag. Yeah, that sucks. That's no good. Well, we may just have to have lag for this stream. I do actually see some lag in the world. Anyway, we'll figure it out. I thought I found out the glitch. I'm like, yo, I can use. We'll figure it out. All right. Anyway, so what we're gonna do is I had a debate against this dude whose channel was Fight the Flat Earth. Yeah, that's a real thing. I know, crazy. And the guy I debated, he used to be a professor in physics, Bryant Myers. Him and McToon, they covered it or whatever. So we are going to watch a little bit of that. I'm gonna explain what they did wrong, and then I bumped into this guy last night, and I want to cover it because I think it's a good opportunity to cover some things I think is important for flat earthers to know and stuff like that. So let's do it. Let's just jump right into it, especially after the beginning. It was a bit rough. All right. So here you go. You got these two really cool guys, and they're covering my debate. So let's see what they have to say. I don't actually know if I make sure I do the audio. Sorry. All right. Let's check it out.
And it's like he's a PhD professor, and you're telling me what's it you know more than him about Foucault pendulums?
Well, yeah, he does think he knows more.
This is gonna get so funny, guys. Seriously. Yeah, if you say the pendulum is in an independent frame of reference that's established with the gimbal, that means the Earth is moving underneath it independently, which means that the pendulum would move not in the plane, but perpendicular to the plane if you had to push it because the Earth's moving underneath it, but that doesn't happen. Try to keep up.
Let's see a little bit of the fun.
And the Globers assume that these stars are infinite distances away and, many, many light years within a vacuum.
You guys heard most of this, right? So we're going to skip to a little bit through because I want to get to where I ran into him last night.
Bring in his own specific cause. And like he always says, he needs to have specific, he makes a claim of specificity. Therefore, he has the burden of proof. Those are his words. All right, let's see more.
Drift. You have translation of motion with any medium of exchange, you would have a drift. You can deny it and say no, but Einstein himself explains this in his letter in 1913 to Ernst Mach.
Okay, why is he talking about Einstein and Mach in his model?
Right. So what I am explaining is that even you guys that think the Earth's a ball and believe in Einstein and relativity would have to admit that the Machian principle is legitimate or valid, that if the Earth was stationary and the sky was moving around it, there would be a translation of motion down to the Earth. It's invoked invoked for the principle. And since we're debating the most dishonest people in the world, you have to force them into corners, right, to make them understand, no, for you to even believe in relativity, you have to admit that what I'm saying is legit. That's the point. They just don't seem to understand it.
Yeah,
that's where he gets wrong there.
that it would drag the pendulum around on a stationary Earth due to the movement around it. So it's as simple as that. And as to direct correlation with latitude is inconsistent and begs the question. And again, just to reiterate this, it's actually it's antithetical to the actual observation, which is that you claim you establish an independent frame of reference, but then you have to actually cause it to move, which shows it's the same frame of reference that is stationary, and then you're detecting additional
Shout out to PJ CNET. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Congrats on the debate last night against Tune. Thank you.
change or motion.
Gosh, I'm going to pull up.
Yeah.
He pre-calls that there's going to be fallacies. But
Yeah.
he never can support his claims.
Literally every time I say fallacy, I support it. Every time.
No.
All right.
Of motion due to the
I lose so much respect for this guy up here because he just goes along with them.
principle. If the sky is moving around a stationary Earth,
This is a former professor in physics, right? I mean,
prove anything one way or the other. Oh, there you go. Oh, wait. He said something about a picture. Of course, pictures aren't proof of any.
Or video. Strange. I've seen debates with
in the back and forward. So yeah, just love to.
oh, I could, of course, sit through this whole 2.5 hours and just destroy, like, quite literally every single thing they say. It's that bad, but we don't have time. We have to get into the next.
Which is evidence of a stationary, non-moving Earth. Let's go to it. I'll mute myself again.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead with it. 10 minutes. Argue away.
Oh, all right. I have not seen this, but I have predictions. Predictions for what Whitsitt's going to say as his evidence for flatness and his evidence for stationariness. He will probably not talk at all about the flat Earth. He will probably attempt to poke holes in the globe, and probably won't even be relevant.
A couple surprises for you here. Yeah.
Isn't it weird how, like, obsessed with me they are?
I like surprises, but
It's kind of gay.
well, somebody mentioned that let's see, Waikiki Moo House says there's a distinct lack of bros in this debate. So I have a little treat for you, Waikiki Moo Cow. Yeah, gotcha. What do you think about that, bro?
Sounds good, bro.
Bro.
Can you believe people let me come stay at their house?
Nathan, this video isn't about you, bro.
Cool story, bro.
There you go. I bet
He
that-
laughs like it was really funny. I mean, I guess it's really not that funny. Yeah, I say bro a lot, but I don't know. I didn't think it was funny. By the way, he'll probably strike this for copyright. FTFE immediately struck it. Like a debate that was scheduled that I was in against him. I covered part of it on my stream, and he struck my channel for copyright. Which, of course, I don't monetize any of my videos. Like, not one single live stream like is even monetized, I don't think. So it's like, okay.
that was probably off sync.
This is so bad. That's why we're
There's
covering
the
it.
link
It's
if you
hilarious.
want to enjoy it yourself. All right, let's hear what let's get me surprised.
I can't fast forward them because they fast forwarded me, so it would be crazy.
All right, I gotta figure out how to share the screen. I'm actually not do it.
It's right above the mute button where you mute yourself. And then if you want to share like a specific application that
There you
gives
go.
audio, if you share the window itself, it doesn't give audio.
All
There
right.
you go.
We're just like, we covered this already in the
Good,
FE
and
debate
put it on
review.
screen.
So we're just gonna like skip through to what they're saying. I want to expose them real fast to give you background before it happens last night. It's really funny.
All right, cool. So heliocentrism is a religion that they ignite, have no moral accountability. So they're
He's not trying to poison the well, but what he exactly did was poison the well.
No, I explained I wasn't poisoning the well because wait, maybe you guys haven't heard that. I think it's funny. I had to use the opportunity to do
the Earth for years. It's based on philosophy, the idea of the Copernican principle that the Earth must not be special. Hence why when you see people obsessively stalk flat Earth for years and build entire channels about it and constantly stalk all the proponents of flat Earth, they are almost always atheistic, nihilistic, materialists because they cling on to this idea, this worldview, this philosophy that the Earth is not special, nothing matters. They have no moral accountability, so there they can stalk people, talk down to them, treat them terribly, dox them, insult them, threaten them, constantly bash them with lies because there's no moral accountability. That may seem like a bit of digression or something. I'm not trying to poison the well, but I'm pointing out.
He's not trying to poison the well, but what he exactly did was poison the well.
It's pouring poison.
I explained I'm not trying to poison the well. I'm just trying to explain that I'm trying to explain the behavior we deal with. It all tracks back to this lie. I made it clear. I'm not trying to discredit them or their argument beforehand. I'm just explaining like the blunt reality. It's pretty funny though. It is dangerously close to poisoning the well.
In fact, he could have actually started by presenting evidence instead. Mr. Sensible.
That's so lame.
him instead of just, you know, if you really just want to shut us the hell up, present the evidence.
We have though. You
That
just
will
ignore
end
it.
it right there. But no, Witsit never wants to do that. He wants to waste a lot of time before he gets to the evidence. But all right, let's see. Maybe that's forthcoming.
That this is actually built upon the idea that there is nothing special about the Earth, and that stems back to the idea that the Copernican principle is true and that the Earth does not occupy a special or unique position in the universe. Moving on, here is a depiction of a magnetic field. All magnetic fields have what's called an inertial plane. Now, I call it an inertial plane because
There's no such thing as an inertial plane in a magnetic field.
Like he so many times in this, and you can go watch yourself. He preemptively gets excited. He has his talking points, and he pauses. He's like, "Oh, I know what to say to him," because he's like obsessed with me. So he keeps up with my arguments, and he's like, "Oh, I know. I have crafted a script for it. There's no such thing as an inertial plane." But like right after that, I say, "I call it an inertial plane because it actually describes the phenomena, a plane that's unchanging or at rest, inertial plane, as opposed to just calling it." What it's called in physics, which is like a block domain wall, which is just named after the person who discovered it. So it doesn't like tell you what's going on at all. So I call it an inertial plane because it actually describes the phenomena. And he paused it too fast.
It's a Ken Wheeler. Isn't
It's
it?
Ken Wheeler. That's just Ken Wheeler invented that, and that doesn't exist. It's not a thing.
actual description of the phenomena, meaning unchanging at rest, a plane of inertia. It's oftentimes referred to as a block wall or block.
Okay, block wall exists.
Mhm. The
And,
magnet.
and a block wall is actually in a magnetic field. A block wall is the part
See, this is where he acts like an expert. Watch this.
of a magnetic field where it's neither north nor south, right? It's
Oh, so it is the unchanging plane in the middle.
inside the magnetic field and where it's neutral, basically.
Where it's neutral,
So on a bar
basically.
magnet, that block wall.
This
there's-
dude's an
there's a-
idiot. I'm sorry, but I mean,
I have a bar magnet here, right?
okay,
Inside
moving
this,
on.
right?
Moving on, because this dude talks so much and we want to get
The
to the next.
magnetic field of the Earth. The magnetic field. There you go. I got it right this time.
Oh, this is hilarious.
Based on actual research. It's not based on empirical belief when he heard it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Green Bull says Witsit is the most confidently deluded person ever.
Watch
Let me just, that deserves this. Witsit is the most confidently deluded person ever. Had to be full screen for that. Oh, and I wasn't full screen. I got to do it again. Witsit is the most confidently deluded person ever. There you go. I got it right this time. And then Digitally Modic Davros says, does he mean plane in motion or not in motion? Is he confused, or does inertia mean something different these days? Inertia means something different to Ken Wheeler.
It means unchanging. You just said neutral. What a clown. Anyway,
He can just
Day
Yes, we do.
per all Ivy League schools and anyone that you could possibly bring up.
this is the second slide. Like they're freaking out, right?
Of course we do. And his ball,
Wall within a magnetic field.
not a magnetic field, Earth's geomagnetic field, which is weak, affected light.
Okay, right. Now this is important. Right, this is why I'm watching this part. So I talk about Pharaoh. So he strawmans me and say that light is affected by a magnetic field, and that I think that in a Pharaoh cell, the light is being bent by the magnetic field. Which obviously I've clearly explained in case you don't know. A Pharaoh cell has ferrofluid and oil in it, and it's got two optical flats pressed on top of each other with LED lights wrapped around it. And then that lights up the fluid that's being affected by the magnetic field, which allows you to see the constructive and destructive lines of interference within a magnetic field. Duh. So you see, it just like he has to strawman these narratives that make us like we're stupid. Like we think the magnetism's taking the light and bending it around or whatever to try to always make us look stupid. It's all strawman, but we're gonna move on. I would say that it would be hilarious for me to cover this whole thing because it's so I could make them, dude. It's so bad. It's so bad. So he proceeds to talk about that, how like light isn't bent by a magnetic field, as if he's smart.
Look at the top left.
Exactly.
Hopefully people will actually
It's all
Right?
over.
Everything he says a lie in this whole thing. I called him out, so we're gonna get to that. So we'll just
In life, if there's an object somewhere, everybody has their own view of that object. Unless there's something happening that would cause you to see it differently, right? It can't be refuted. It can't be, it doesn't need to be refuted. You didn't support it.
Yeah,
Right.
and he said there were all those all those data that they took, and I kept saying in the chat, citation, please. I kept as quickly as I could because he was like making these claims.
It's an application of actually like you can take the formulas that they use for timeanddate.com.
Literally not true. Literally not true. Everything he says in this stream's a lie. It's insane. It's insane, bro.
They have a formula.
Oh.
where
And
they
this, and the
have-
only reason I'm responding is 'cause I'm going to teach you guys like how incredibly incompetent these two little goobers are. That's the only reason that I normally ignore them, right? Because they don't deserve like energy and stuff like that, and like they're really lame. But I'm just going to use them as to teach them. We're schooling the Globers.
apply the same length or a length based on something to the vector that they draw for each location. Or just saying it can't be refuted.
With the Polaroid movement,
Moron. And just saying
He literally can't refute it, right? Because it shows that the reason he can't refute it is I'm like, because this shows the data. It's like the data of the sun over the course of the year, and it's individual for each observer. And he's like, oh, he didn't know what to say because it doesn't fit in the script because it isn't refuted. You can't refute it. It's not refutable, right? Because the sun being in an apparent position relative to each observer it works perfectly on a stationary plane. All of a sudden, you don't have any of your little straw mans to beat up. And so he didn't know what to say. So he's just like, you didn't prove it. It's so funny because they can just make it whatever they want. And if they have math to show it, then it's cool. Now we have math to show it, and it's not cool. It's hilarious. But anyway, we're moving on.
again, he just says it's irrefutable.
And then he'll use Einstein to support his.
Let's hear what they're saying here.
to be honest with you, there's
He doesn't, but he wouldn't want to ad hom somebody.
They're
Right?
so like,
Austin takes the high road, right? He never ad homs, or he wouldn't.
well, I wouldn't make my argument an insult. That's right. That's fallacious and incompetent.
Poison the well, would he?
Yeah, well, he did more than that during Flattoberfest with Einstein. He like went into the married his cousin thing and just got into it. It's like, come on, that's it.
Oh, are you upset that I called out that Einstein's a crazy fuzzy-haired crackpot that married his first cousin, then wrote about how he wanted to have sex with her underage daughter? Oh, are you mad that I called out the fact he oftentimes forgot to wear clothes? Are you mad I talked about the fact that he was openly an ethnic supremacist in his letters, and he referred to every other race that wasn't Jewish as less than human openly? Are you upset that I called out Einstein for being a side? Oh, come on, Austin. You know what I did say in the Flattoberfest? I'm like, but of course, those personal things don't mean that what he said is wrong necessarily. So let's look at what he said. That's what I said. I said that here too. But you see, like, they just have to beat up all kinds of strawmans. It's because they're defending a lie. If you're new to this conversation, you should find out. These are like the best they have right now. And they lie constantly. You should wonder why. If you're defending the globe, why you got to lie about everyone and everything? That's weird, huh?
I mean, if you're gonna do that, then Abraham married his sister.
Oh, what a Christian. Tries to then bash
So-
Abraham.
If that's a thing, then obviously anything that came out of Abraham is wrong.
Which is a straw man, right? Because I didn't say just because he was a psychopath and was incestuous and wanted to have sex with his cousin's daughter, everything he said was wrong. I never said that. But again, he pauses it too early. And watch what I say here. But he won't be like, oh, dang, he did say that. He'll just skip past it. And then you have really like, I don't want to be mean, but you have like people that aren't really following along very well, that are kind of there as like it's a church. And people may even do that here, where they just hear, you can't just hear someone and then that's your new belief. You have to think about it and understand it for yourself. Like, so they'll just ignore it.
By
And
that
then-
logic.
And then he'll use Einstein to support his claims.
As a hostile
anything
witness.
himself, but that doesn't necessarily mean what he said is wrong. So let's check out what he did.
You got like 2 minutes, man.
So I literally say that doesn't mean what he actually said is wrong, right? So it's so
Okay,
funny.
this guy invented special relativity to counter experiments that revealed the Earth was motionless in space, which actually led into general relativity, who had to claim that, where he had to claim that the center of the Earth cosmology was viable. And here's him saying no optical experiment can prove that the Earth is moving and it could be geocentric.
Oh, hold on a second. Now he mentioned it. He mentioned this
Didn't even claim
last
anything
night.
himself, but that doesn't necessarily mean what he said is wrong. So let's check out what he did.
You got like 2 minutes, man.
I got you. This guy invented special relativity to counter
Alright,
experiments that
alright,
revealed the
okay,
Earth was
pause.
motionless in space, which actually led into general relativity.
This is a good part. This is a good part. Pay attention. We're gonna now school's in session, Glovers.
Had to claim that, where he had to claim that the center of the Earth cosmology was viable. And here's him saying no.
Okay. You notice that after the word experiment, there's a little punctuation mark. That punctuation mark is a period. In the actual quote, there's a comma and the sentence continues. Now, he mentioned that this was a cherry-picked quote yesterday, and yet he still used it today. Why? Why would you?
Now, let me see if I have it right here. There it is. So this is what he's talking about. While I was thinking of this problem in my student years, I came to the strange result of Michelson's experiment. Soon, I came to the conclusion that our idea about the motion of the Earth with respect to the ether is incorrect. We admit Michelson's null result as a fact if we do that. This was the first path which led me to the special theory of relativity. Since then, I have come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment. Though the Earth is revolving around the sun, Albert Einstein, in How I Created the Theory of Relativity, in a speech he gave at Kyoto University. Okay, now I explained many times in the debate he's referencing that it makes our point better. The rest of the quote makes our point better, is that he was a heliocentrist. He believes the Earth is moving around the sun. And in that context, he's saying you can't use any optical experiment to prove it. It makes our quote better. It makes our point even stronger. It doesn't refute our point, right? So it's hilarious. It's obviously
Why
hilarious.
would you continue to use this that you know is cherry-picked, Austin? Is it because you are fine deceiving people?
Who am I deceiving? Let's cover it again, okay? I want everyone to think about how incredibly desperate and incompetent the Glovers are here, okay? Hey, Glovers, school's in session. I know you're watching or you're going to watch it. Pay attention. Drop this argument. You look ridiculous, okay? In context, it says, since then, I've come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment, though the Earth is revolving around the sun. We invoke this to say, even Einstein said you can't use any optical experiment to detect the motion of the Earth. So the fact he says, though the Earth is revolving around the sun, only makes our point stronger. It doesn't refute it. We're not deceiving anyone if we just show them that part. We just show them that part because that's how citations work. We don't literally send them the whole book. I'm not going to make a meme of an entire book. And people say like, oh, you're cherry picking because I'm not supposed to make a meme of an entire book. Or you can say no, that's how citations work. So it's the point that's relevant. And if went and read in context, it wouldn't change the point that's being invoked in the argument. So it's not cherry picking. It's very simple concept. Okay. Now watch what he does.
Yeah. He still did it with the other quote, with a massive shell quote. He kept he still used the cherry pick version of that even after he admitted to me that he knew. He's like, okay, I agree, you know.
Yeah, but
he
his
still-
audience, he doesn't mind lying to his audience. Right?
Think about what he's doing. Like, because the point I've already addressed that the fact that it doesn't say that in the letter. It says that even though it would be immeasurably small or almost immeasurably small, doesn't change the reason I'm invoking it. It's that even within your paradigm of relativity, you must admit that I am correct when I invoke that principle. You have to admit it's legit, or you have to throw relativity out. It doesn't change my point at all. It doesn't change. And I didn't throw anything out, just so you guys know, with the quote, with the letter from Ernst Mach, right? I got multiple people, flat earthers and globe earthers, that speak German or are from Germany to like actually translate the letter. I went to Google Translate and tried to have it translated, and it couldn't translate it. So I went and actually I had like a partial English translation I found on the internet, which is what led me to tracking down the letter, which was not easy, but I couldn't find another one. So I couldn't find a fuller version or anything. And I didn't want to like just take it. I wanted to fact check and make sure that's what the quote actually said. So I went to flat earthers and globe earthers that speak German, gave them the letter and asked them to translate it for me, and waited a couple of days to get everyone's response. Everyone told me they couldn't read what's in parentheses. So it's like, I didn't intentionally, I couldn't get the English translation. Everyone told me they couldn't read it because it's so it's not easy. It's not legible. Okay. So that's it. Then he showed me that he found what it said. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I didn't know it said that. Right. So I told him what happened. I just tell the truth. I'm not lying to anyone because it doesn't change my point anyway, which is that if you believe in relativity, you have to concede the principle that if something moves around a stationary Earth, it will translate motion to that earth. That's the only reason it's invoked. Think about, watch what they do here.
And lying.
He's like, okay, I agree,
Yeah, but
he's
his
still- but he's-
audience, he doesn't mind lying to his audience. Right? He's fine. Austin is fine lying to his audience because they pay for his lifestyle. He doesn't need to go get a job. He can grift off of them all day, every day. He can do that Mount Meru conference like I'm sure Mark Braun loved. And Tanner Stewart probably was a very big fan of that. And
this is because there's some dude I never even heard of who claims to be a Satanist apparently and says the earth's flat and we should all go jump in a lake of fire in the center allegedly or whatever. So he's basically inadvertently trying to say that, like, I'm sure that you're cool with the Satanist. And he's just, look what he's doing. Now tell me that if you're one of those people, I think there's a ball and you have any integrity, how can you condone this? When I just explain what actually happened. I explain what literally happened and look what he's doing. What a terrible person, right? Like, am I tripping? This is a terrible human being. We're gonna get through this so we can show you him getting destroyed.
Leaving in a cherry-picked quote that has a period where there should be a comma. Because lying doesn't matter to him.
See, again, look, it's so bad. Look,
just needs to get their money.
Wow. And again, here's the quote, right? It's nothing to do with me getting money. Flat Earth has been nothing but detrimental to my finances, like to an insane degree. Okay. So it's laughable, right? As he literally makes money off hating on Flat Earth, right? But this is the point. Since then, I've come to believe that the motion of the earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment. I put a period there. I made 107 memes, right? And like, it took me hours and hours and I was like exhausted, like late into the night, early in the morning, one night. Right. And, I put a period there instead of 2 periods. That's all I should have done. Put 2 periods, right? Because it's just the part that's important, which is since then I've come to believe that the motion of the earth cannot be detected by any optical. That's the only point that's important. If you read the whole beginning here or the end, it does nothing but make my point stronger. So I'm not lying to anyone. I'm not misrepresenting it to lie or trick anyone, right? Like, none of that's happening. So why you gotta lie so much? I wonder why you gotta lie so much. That's the question. Dude, I need a pair of waders to get through the smugness. I'm telling you, bro. Thank you for the $10 super chat, Adam. Much love, brother. It's crazy, bro. It's crazy what they do. They're the reason I feel like I have to talk about this some is because they say they are so immoral that they can be so blatantly dishonest and flip the dishonesty onto me and stuff like that people will be convinced by it. So it's like they have to be exposed to some extent.
He didn't mention that he cherry picked this. He kind of went a little fast. Obviously, he didn't change his PowerPoint from yesterday.
That's right. I don't make a new PowerPoint every time some random anti-flat earth zealot wants to debate me. I would be constantly making PowerPoints.
Experiment can prove that the earth is moving and it could be geocentric. Here is him saying no terrestrial experiment can prove that the earth is moving around the sun according to relativity and that all attempts to try to measure this was a negative.
According to relativity. Did he say according to relativity?
And he literally does. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull this up. This gets so bad for him and it gets even worse. We're covering this so I can then get into the debate. He gets so embarrassed, so thoroughly embarrassed last night that like I almost feel bad for him because now some people may not realize it, but we're about to make sure you guys realize it. So let's let him talk for a second while I find the PDF.
Question to whether or not the motion of the earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments. We have already remarked that all attempts of the nature led to a negative result. This is important. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result.
So yeah, it does say relativity, doesn't it, Looney Tunes?
It was difficult before relativity. It was not difficult after relativity.
He thought that was an intelligible response there. But just wait, you guys will see. Sorry, I hope you guys are following this. What I'm trying to believe.
Right. But more importantly here, I don't know if he's going to. So he's going to probably quote the 2007 book from Hawking, Stephen Hawking here next. That's probably his next slide.
You got
prior to relativity that was hard to cope with. Here's
Okay. Now, if you read this, it's word for word the same. Right? I want to hear what he says about Hawking's book.
him being reiterated by Hawking, and again him being reiterated by Hawking in 2007.
Reiterated by Hawking, huh?
And here's a part that I don't think Craig fully
Yeah, literally. He, by the way, Stephen Hawking wrote that he wrote a forward and then put all kinds of quotes from Einstein so that in a certain what he thought was important, so that you would understand the overall picture and the point, which is that there's a stubbornly persistent illusion within relativity that causes us to believe that we're at the center of the universe, even though we're not. That's literally the point of the whole entire book. That is the reason the book was put together the way it is and titled what it is. Duh. It's wild. That's what I've been saying the whole time, and that's still what the case is.
understands, or he certainly didn't last time. This is the prediction versus the actual result of Michelson.
Globe zealots proving once and for all that NPCs exist. Yeah, for sure, because they watch this and then say that I get destroyed.
Morley, which changed all of physics, and they had to say the ruler, their measuring apparatus, physically shrank
They didn't say that.
just to deceive us via illusion that the Earth was
You
actually
heard that? He
stationary.
said they didn't say that. They literally did. We'll cover it. This is school for Glovers.
And that time physically expands and slows down. So any attempt to measure and prove that the Earth is moving around the sun is a futile pursuit. So you could never prove it. Just happens to always look that way. So in conclusion, just in case people don't understand, that's actually Albert Michelson who did it himself. And he's saying that this conclusion contradicts the explanation which presupposes that the Earth moves. And to this day, you must claim that everything is a magic illusion. The universe is a wizard with a wand constantly deceiving you via illusion to make you think the Earth is a spinning ball, even though it always shows you that the Earth is a stationary topographical plane. So there you go.
Jeez. It's the same script.
Nice, finished it. 30 seconds left, almost like you clocked it. All right, Craig, you got 10 minutes to take apart what you just.
All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to show you this text real fast. Share screen. Hopefully this will be an option here. Is it not going to let me? There we go. Okay, let's get bigger. There we go. Okay. This is so funny, right? This is the whole context there. The second class of facts to which we have alluded has reference to the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments. We have already remarked in section 5 that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result for reasons now to be discussed. The inherited prejudices about time and space did not allow any doubt to arise as to the prime importance of the Galilean transformation for changing over from one body of reference to another. Now watch this. Then he goes on, and he later on, to keep this in mind, he says, this is just about Michelson Morley. And then he says, it's in the paragraph right below it. He's like, it's only about Michelson Morley. It's only about Michelson Morley. This is the actual paper. It's called Relativity, the Special and General Theory by Einstein. Okay. And I think it was actually written in the 1920. I thought it was 16. I think it's 20. And then he thinks it's 15, but it's 20 is when it was published. So in one of, he says it's only talking about Michelson Morley. It says in one of the most notable of these attempts, Michelson devised a method which appears as though it must be decisive. In one of the most notable of these attempts, what attempts is that? Attempts to measure the motion of the Earth. All right. In one of these attempts, meaning any terrestrial experiment that attempts to detect the motion of the Earth has resulted in a negative result. And prior to relativity being put forward, it was difficult to reconcile the fact that it never detected the Earth's motion. The relativity saved the day, basically. One example, one of these most notable attempts is Michelson. Okay. So think about how, now keep that in mind, because there's no way I can cover all of their after show. I could literally destroy it, but I don't want to let ego get into it where I'm like, I just want to embarrass them. I want this to be informative so people understand it. Nothing's taken out of context. I don't show these quotes and this information to people trying to deceive people or lie or misrepresent anything. Everything that I say about it is true. Everything that I say that when I post the quote, I'm not misrepresenting it to trick anyone. None of that is what has happened. It's all exactly what's going on. And these people don't understand it. It's okay. A lot of people don't understand it. I don't know everything about every aspect of relativity. Even Einstein himself said, since mathematicians have gotten a hold of my theory, I don't even understand relativity anymore. It was like oftentimes said, there's probably 5 people in the whole world that actually understand relativity and all this stuff, right? Because it's so convoluted nonsense. It's like insane, right? But that is not the point. The point is that these people pretend like they do understand it. And they know that we're wrong about the Earth being stationary and being a plane. So they must be exposed. So come back over here. Now, I just showed you guys the PDF. I'll keep it pulled up for later. But anyway, this is going to be a decently long stream, but I still have to go kind of fast.
Presented. Ready to go?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's see what Craig says.
I mean, there was no positive evidence there that was that.
Okay, so here's where he acts like he rebuts me. Like we've already watched this again, so we don't need to watch that. And then we talk about the pendulum at first. This is where I want to get when they're talking. It's when they start talking. This is when they need to be exposed.
Yeah, you're muted.
All right. Let me catch up here. Digital Demonic Davros says, "Can I have a moment of your time? Have you heard about Shallow Earth? It won't take long. It doesn't go deep."
That's not funny.
And then we got Charlie says, "FDFE and MC2, the orbital motion of the Earth is demonstrated by stellar aberration, stellar parallax." It came out weird. And seasonal Doppler shift of stars. I would love to see Whitsitt explain all 3 of these. Well, Whitsitt's explanation is it's just stars in the sky. It's just lights in the sky.
And the actual objective rebuttal to that claim is, well, how do you actually know it's the Earth's orbit causing that change in the stars? Could it not just be that the stars are moving and then they change their movement over time? Of course it is. Of course, Einstein knew about in this exact same paper, which they've never read, right? In the same paper, it explains that he invokes like what you could say like aberration would show you what the orbit is and different things like this. But he knew that was just having to assume that the Earth is in orbit. He was talking about a direct measurement, actually measuring the Earth's motion through space, right? Because that's what's actually important. That's what would be a big deal. When Michelson, and he explains in this paper that they come up with an incredible way to do it. And it's, we'll cover it in a little bit when we cover what McToon was saying so wrong, right? But they get this primary part so wrong. But the point is, even Einstein's like, yeah, well, we tried to actually directly measure it on the Earth. And we found out that every attempt to do that on the Earth, it doesn't work. McToon is clearly suffering from parasites. Physical ones from eating too much pork and spiritual ones as well. Hope he heals himself eventually. Yeah, we do. We hope you heal yourself, McToon. I'm not even joking. I hope you get better, man. Because like what you do in this stream it's just very telling.
Right. Never mind trying to explain something that contradicts your model if you can just hand wave it away.
I literally
He
just
wants
did.
us
It's
to
that
do
easy.
something on Earth that will show this. He keeps demanding he wants an experiment on Earth.
Well,
Yeah.
tell you what, Whitsitt.
Yeah.
How about you lead the way and Whitsitt?
Because it would be actual measurement. You goofballs. Why would we, when we discovered that NASA was founded by Nazis, they sent us all kinds of propaganda. We found out that the moon was photoshopped into their picture. It circulated the internet, and then NASA changed the picture. And then, because then you contrasted it, and no longer could you find the Photoshop box. And then all the Globers, they're so dishonest. They were like, "See, you flirfs are liars. That there wasn't a Photoshop box there." But then we used the Wayback Machine and found out the Photoshop box was still there, but they had changed the picture of the Earth from space when they were allegedly on the moon. They had Photoshopped it in, and we contrasted the picture, and showed the box, the Photoshop box. And then they changed it where you couldn't figure out the Photoshop with contrast. And then we went in the Wayback Machine and proved it used to be there, but they had changed it. So when a company, whenever an organization does something like that, and that's the last alleged real picture of the Earth from space is the moon missions, and they were photoshopping pictures, and then the ballers say Photoshop didn't exist until 1987, when you can actually prove that they were photoshopping pictures in the early 1800s, right? Doing spirit photography and all kinds of things where they were photoshopping. That's what we would call it now, photoshopping pictures. And they had like big models of these different planets and stuff that they could take pictures of, including the moon, right? And you could just Photoshop it in easily. It's been done for hundreds of years, right? And so this is what we're doing with now. When we come over here, now we want to actually validate the claims that we're on this spinning ball, because it doesn't make sense to any honest person why you would have to do stuff like that. Why would the government Photoshop a picture of the Earth in the moon missions and then not claim to have a real picture since then, all the way up to 2015? And then all the ones they claim today are actually stitched together. Why? And then all of a sudden now they're claiming they're going back out there. Why would we want to just blindly believe your presupposition that the Earth is moving? Yeah, that's right, Bryant. We want something on the Earth that's actually going to detect the orbit of the Earth. And everything that's been done didn't work. Now you have a theory that says, oh, you could never detect it. That's why none of it worked, because even though it is moving, you could just never tell it's moving because time dilates and everything contracts within the frame of reference in motion. So an ad hoc, unfalsifiable, wave your wand and it always looks like it's magically stationary. We want actual evidence. And I'm not saying, Brian, by the way, Brian, I'm not saying I want you to do anything. What I'm saying is the only thing I want you to do is to concede that relativity says you cannot detect the motion of the Earth around the sun from the Earth. That's it. That's all we want, is for you to be honest about your position so other people that are new to the conversation can make their own mind up honestly, right? And you guys lie about the whole thing. It makes it very difficult for us to just, all we're trying to do is just give people the info and let them think for themselves. And you're trying to gatekeep them, bro. You're trying to lie to them and deceive them and misrepresent what the actual position is, which is the Earth's a ball that spins and revolves around the sun using gravity, which is relativity, the bending and warping of space-time, and that you can never measure the motion of the Earth around the sun from the Earth because time slows down and matter contracts every time you try to measure it. Moving on.
Witsit, if you want to see a measurement of rotation from Earth that doesn't use stars and doesn't use fiber optic gyroscopes,
You're doing so good.
doesn't use levitating.
See, we're talking about you see how lost he is? We're talking about orbit around the sun, and he's talking about axial rotation. He doesn't even follow the conversations. And he's sitting on there with a former professor in physics.
Spheres in a magnetic field, and doesn't use pendulums on an independent gimbal, and doesn't use rotating gyroscopes. All those things that you somehow won't accept.
They're literally non sequitur to orbit, you goofball.
But you lead the way, Austin, and first you show the measurement of stationariness using
I haven't seen that yet.
whatever it is that you think is the measurement, the appropriate.
Look at Brian. I haven't seen that yet. He's asking for a measurement of stationariness. Okay. Now, what would you do? What would be a measurement of stationariness? Well, you would develop something that would detect the orbit of the Earth. And then it would be sensitive enough to detect 10 times as small as the orbit. So it's overly precise. It's overly sensitive enough to detect the motion. And then you would go test it. And then you would find out, oh, we got a negative result. It doesn't measure any motion. That would be stationary. See, the default position is that it's stationary. To actually tell us something stationary, you would have to see it move and then stop. Or you'd have to get outside of it and see that it's not moving. You'd have to find a way to test it. Or you would just have negative results every time you attempted to test for motion. That's what a test for stationariness is. A measurement of stationariness is. It's relative to motion. Stationary, dude, that's exactly what you would get. We'll cover it because we got into the debate. And like I said, this will be a pretty long stream because I do feel like people need to have this broken down because they lie so much and they cast a spell and I don't like it.
Measurement of stationariness. You show that. Oh, no, wait. Witsit in the opening said, made the absolutely ridiculous claim that the default position is his position. Why is the default position your position, Witsit?
Because we literally don't feel motion. Every attempt to measure the orbit around the Earth has failed miserably and given us a negative result. We see the stuff in the sky move around us. We develop technology as if the Earth isn't moving. I can stack little bitty pebbles on top of each other and they'll balance perfectly in stillness. I see the wind go back and forth in all different directions because the earth is stationary. I feel when the earth moves because there's an earthquake. Okay. The default position is that the earth is stationary. That's what we all observe. Okay. If the earth's actually moving, we would have to be able to prove that. That's the burden of proof. You don't measure stationariness. It's insane, the sophistry. And by the way, the definition of sophistry is using fallacious arguments with an intention to deceive. Okay, that's what these people do. That's why no one will cover them. It causes me to get into like a low vibration because they're so dishonest.
That's it. I can declare just as easily that the default position is my position. And I would have backing for that because the standard entry into debate is that the person that is supporting the one that has the general consensus is the one that doesn't have the burden as strongly.
Doesn't have the burden as strongly. Okay, no. Appeal to consensus does not in any way override the fact that all empirical evidence shows us one thing. And you claim that it's actually doing the opposite of that, but we can't prove it because all measurements are going to trick us into thinking it's not orbiting around the sun because of time dilation and length contraction. So any device you can dream up of to measure the orbit, it will be contracted. So you won't be able to tell that it's moving while you're on the earth. That's what? You have the burden of proof. You're making a claim antithetical to empirical evidence. No one cares. It's just kind of like people saying, oh yeah, you know how they want you to get genetically modified and take that jab that everyone's talking about? Well, all the science agrees. So if you have the burden of proof to show that it's bad, well, we can't go in the future and show it's bad. We can't prove a negative. It's an insane claim. It's ignorant, bro. It's very low IQ, dude.
I can support, unlike you, Witsit, I can support my citation.
He shows some book about debating.
At 0. We can set your position.
Therefore, it's stationary. It's stationary. I'm still waiting for something besides just I can't feel it's moving, so therefore it's stationary.
Dude, literally, Michelson Morley attempted to detect the orbit, Bryant. It was a negative result. You had to come up with an ad hoc theory to explain away the negative result. Did you guys not read the paper, bro? It's like you've been keeping up with me for weeks. You've seen the quote. You say it's out of context. So which means you would have to go read it in context. In context, it says, all attempts to detect the motion of the earth, all terrestrial experiments attempting to detect the motion of the earth have been a negative result. Hey, Bryant, if the earth was stationary and you tried to detect the motion of the earth, what kind of result would you get? A negative result. That is evidence for stationariness, right? They're so smug and so wrong and dishonest. It's crazy.
Can't feel it isn't a measurement though.
No, it's not.
No one said it was.
You have to first curve, but none of them actually try. And I know why. I mean, there's nothing to
dude, you aren't an honest person, Brian. And I gave you a chance, bro. And Dave tried to stand up for you. And look what you're sitting here doing, dude. Look what you're sitting here doing, bro. Like you're amping up all these lies, bro.
Establish, stationariness other than.
Okay, open conversation.
The verifier premise. Now, when you say there's a begging, depending on your location.
All right, so thousands out of their quiver. They
so boring.
So just because Craig was explaining something, it was sophistry to Witsit. How is that actually? It's not, right? Craig wasn't, in a true sense of sophistry, just arguing to argue.
That's not what sophistry is. So he paused an entire stream to come tell the audience. Now, by the way, if we sat and we watched the entire stream, I could do this for every single thing he said. He's drastically incompetent, bro. I'm being honest. But anyway, he stopped a whole stream to explain to his audience that I was wrong for saying sophistry, because sophistry is arguing just to argue. That's not what sophistry is, my guy. Sophistry is using fallacious arguments with the intention to deceive. That's what you've done this entire stream. That's what FTFE did the entire debate, and that's what you did in the entire debate that we're about to cover. Textbook sophistry. Of course you deny you do it. You don't even understand what it is, or you're being intentionally dishonest to defend your sophistry, which is even worse.
So anyway, that's it's a bit nebulous, but it's definitely not the true meaning of sophistry. But listen to Whitsitt when he in the future here, because I'm sure he'll say it again, when he accuses Craig of being a sophist, consider what Craig did and see whatever that is what Whitsitt thinks is sophistry.
Yeah, that's what it is. That's literally what it is.
We'll see.
So you're making a claim of exclusivity built upon a begging the question fallacy. Thanks for playing.
No,
He didn't make a claim of exclusiveness is more powerful than that, Whitsitt.
Like-
Everything ever can be rejected by using this method. Wow.
Oh, you're triggered. You're triggered, huh?
I mean, your hypothesis can involve numbers. Everything ever.
Detect the motion of the Earth through the ether. So then there was a predicted value as to what would be seen. And of course, that was not observed. Now, Einstein explains that he came up with special relativity in response to Michelson-Morley to explain the results. And then that's what led him to eventually claim
Yeah,
that
take your notes, bro.
time slowed down and physically expanded and dilated, slowed down, and that the measuring apparatus contracted. Okay, so that's why he came up with that, was to explain why, even though the one path.
All right, look, he says no. Now, look, let me read this right here. This is again, do I need to show it on the screen? Because it's like people are so desperate, they'll claim this isn't actually in the paper. You know, like that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with next level here, next level stuff here. Okay. This is right after he said the quote that I always use. Okay, this result was interpreted physically by regarding K as at rest with respect to a hypothetical ether of space. On the other hand, all coordinate systems K1 moving relatively to K were to be regarded as in motion with respect to the ether. This motion of K against the ether drift relative to K were attributed the more complicated laws which were supposed to hold relative to K. Strictly speaking, such an ether drift ought also to be assumed relative to the Earth, and for a long time, for the efforts of physicists that were devoted to attempts to detect the existence of an ether drift at the Earth's surface. Then it says again, one of the most notable attempts was Michelson-Morley. Now we come down here, right, where he's explaining this. Although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, talking about the two lights, one going with and one going against the motion of the Earth, Michelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference in which this difference should have been clearly detectable. So he's saying even though when you shoot the laser, you remember when their whole argument was, oh, Lorentz contraction would have been 1/5000th the width of a hair or whatever, right? Yeah, that's the point. That's the point. Einstein's explaining here in his paper that he's like, although if you shot light with the motion of the Earth going 20 miles a second around the sun and then against it, you know, the difference would be really small. But Michelson and Morley developed such an impressive apparatus that it would be clearly detectable with their apparatus, right? Okay. So, although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, Michelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference in which this difference should have been clearly detectable, but the experiment gave a negative results. A fact very perplexing to physicists. Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, the amount of contraction being just sufficient to compensate for the difference in the time mentioned above. Comparison with the discussion in section 11 shows that also from the standpoint of the theory of relativity, this solution of the difficulty was the right one, meaning the solution to the difficulty of the negative results was the right one from the standpoint of relativity. Again, it explains here. They said that the reason you got the negative result was because of a contraction. And he explains here that also from the standpoint of relativity, the same answer was the right one. But on the basis of the theory of relativity, the method of interpretation is incomparably more satisfactory. According to the theory, there is no such thing as a specially favored unique coordinate system to occasion the introduction of the ether idea, and hence there can be no ether drift, nor any experiment with which to demonstrate it. Here the contraction of moving bodies follows from the two fundamental principles of the theory without the introduction of particular hypotheses. And as the prime factor involved in this contraction, we find not the motion in itself, to which we cannot attach any meaning, but the motion with respect to the body of reference chosen in the particular case in point. Thus, for a coordinate system moving with the Earth, the mirror system of Michelson and Morley is not shortened, but it is shortened for a coordinate system which is at rest relatively to the sun. Okay, so it did physically shorten, okay, but we are in the frame of reference that shortened with it, so we couldn't tell that it shortened. So it didn't shorten for us because we shortened with it. Now, I've been saying this to them the whole time. This is what happened. He took Lorentz contraction from Lorentz throughout the ether, kept the same mechanism, and applied it to the arm, but made up a different interpretation and didn't actually fully introduce a mechanism for the result. Again, he says it in his own words. It's insane to me. I hope that you guys followed that. It seems pretty, I feel like I broke that down pretty simple. Moving on, we're about to go to the debate I had with them.
Quote unquote traveled was longer and therefore took, it was a greater distance. So it took longer to travel that greater distance because it's going against the motion of the Earth. It didn't show that. So it's because actually, even though it did travel further, the apparatus shrank. So it looks like it's the same. And even though it did take longer to go further, time slowed down.
Okay. He's mixing here, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So he's for reference. So
you hear how unconfident Brian is? Because he doesn't know. No, I'm not mixing. You don't understand it. But he's about to teach everyone. Watch. It's really funny.
Michelson Morley, after Michelson Morley came out, it was groundbreaking. People didn't expect that result. It was the null result. It was failed experiment. They didn't measure what they thought they were going to measure. So people,
which was a motion through the ether, a motion of the Earth through ether causing a friendship.
Like, what do we do? And they proposed a bunch of different things, which is what you do in science. Perfectly valid. So Lorentz proposed that the apparatus was physically shrinking because of the ether. That was his proposal. And the quantity of the shrinkage, he came up with his Lorentz formula, right?
Yep.
Which is
The Lorentz.
one minus square root
One
of
minus v.
what?
Well, it's L naught times the square root of 1 minus v squared over c squared.
There
And that's
we
the
go.
Lorentz.
And of course, he was just making fun of me for getting the equation wrong in the debate with FDFE earlier because I misremembered it prior to pulling out the factor, which is that it was v squared times c squared, which it is prior to actually applying it with the factor, and then you have v squared over c squared. And they were just making fun of me, and both of them were just making fun of how stupid I am. That was like the only thing they found the whole debate that I was so wrong about, other than lying, because I did get that wrong. And then immediately I said, oh, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe I misremembered. And then later on, FTFE starts getting destroyed and has to start conceding things. And then Bryant jumps in and says, well, FTFE is actually honest. So you see, when he got something wrong, he actually admitted it, unlike Witsit. When he got the equation wrong, he wouldn't even admit it. I literally said, oh, maybe I'm wrong. I may have misremembered. So you see how they lie to just try to taint my character? So that way, they don't have to respond to the debate. They can just rip down my character and make it look like I'm deceiving people and being dishonest. Yeah, you guys are very, very morally upstanding people. We should all take advice from you.
Lorentz factor. That the gamma is the Lorentz factor. That's in all the.
Don't talk about yourself like that, Brian.
And that's the Lorentz factor. That the gamma is the Lorentz factor.
Man, don't talk about yourself like that, bro. You can do better.
So it wasn't Michelson. It was actually Lorentz that said that. Michelson, they weren't talking about any contraction of apparatuses. That was all Lorentz.
Did you hear what he just said and what we just read?
After the fact said that. Michelson, they weren't talking about any contraction of apparatuses. That was all Lorentz after the fact trying to figure it out.
and Lorentz.
Now, no one said that Mickelson or Morley were talking about contraction. I said Lorentz proposed within a year or two of Mickelson and Morley the Lorentz contraction, claiming that the arm shortened. That's why the Earth is still spinning, but the universe is a wizard and it tricks you into thinking it's not spinning. And then Einstein took the Lorentz contraction but threw out the ether. Now they're saying that he didn't say the arm was shortening, but we just now read he said that it actually is. It's just relative to reference frame. And when you're in the same reference frame as the contraction, you can't tell because all of space around it contracts. So it doesn't contract for you, even though in reality it's physically contracting, which is not going to allow you to be able to detect it.
Lorentz claimed that the apparatus shrunk,
In his
keeping
model.
ether. That was his attempt to keep ether, right? To
Yeah, and-
explain it within the realm of ether still existing.
Which would have meant that molecular forces would have had to change. That was a big part of that problem, right? Because everything's
Yeah.
physically shrinking. And so that has to,
No
Anyway.
one's arguing for that, though, Bryant. No one's arguing. Yes, they would have had to propose an entirely new electrodynamic framework. I've tried to teach you this a few times, right? And then they went and tried to do that. Other people did. And they tried to do an experiment where they would show the arm actually shortened, proposing a new electrodynamic framework. But then they found out they couldn't ever measure link contraction or link shortening because it's not a real thing. Einstein says, oh, it's a real thing. You'll just never be able to find it. And then Lorentz was saying it's a real thing. You should be able to find it somehow. And they couldn't find it when they did a particular test, testing Lorentz's ether theory. So then, yeah, it wasn't true because the Earth's not orbiting and the arm didn't contract, Bryant. No one's claiming it did. That's dumb.
that's,
Yeah, and the reason why it physically shrank is because the ether like pressed it, right?
well,
so
this
the-
is what I
Look at it. He's making fun of Lorentz, who literally would walk circles around this dude and like chugging Jameson. He's making fun of him. And Einstein had to use Lorentz, the crazy ether guy. Yeah, Einstein had to use his. We just now read him saying. You want me to read it again? Let me read it again for you guys. This is Einstein explaining what happened. So crazy, man. So, although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, Mickelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference in which this difference should have been clearly detectable, but the experiment gave a negative result, a fact very perplexing to physicists. Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, the amount of contraction being just sufficient enough to compensate for the difference in the time mentioned above. Okay? Comparison with the discussion in section 11 shows that also from the standpoint of the theory of relativity, this solution of the difficulty was the right one. How do people not understand it? How does a former professor in physics not understand it, but then tries to drag me through the mud because I allegedly don't understand it? Again, keep in mind the word difficulty here, okay? So it says, Mickelson Morley performed an experiment that you should have been able to detect the difference, but it was a negative result. And then it says, a fact very perplexing to physicists. Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty by assuming the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of the motion, the amount of contraction being just sufficient enough to compensate for the difference. Okay? And then he goes on to say that his discussion in section 11 shows that also from the standpoint of relativity, this solution of the difficulty was the right one. But on the basis of the theory of relativity, the method of interpretation is incomparably more satisfactory. And this is because it says you can't actually ever detect it. The reason that relativity is more satisfactory than Lorentz is because Lorentz would have to say there'd be a difference in intermolecular reactions with a new electrodynamic, a whole entire new electrodynamic framework, right? And you would be able to detect it within your frame, but we never will ever measure link shortening. That's not a real thing that happens. You can never measure it. But see, Lorentz was more honest. He was trying to figure out what was really going on. He really thought the Earth was orbiting, and he really wanted to figure out what was going on, right? So he was actually trying to put forth something that could be tested because he's like, what else could explain it? If not, then the Earth isn't moving, right? So he was actually trying to figure it out. Einstein came in, it's like he knew that the earth wasn't moving. It's like he knew he had to come up with something where it would be unfalsifiable. He came up with an idea that says you could never prove it. So yeah, it's incomparably more satisfactory because it says you could never detect it. That's the whole difference. So I just now read Einstein saying that according to relativity, you do have a contraction of the matter due to the motion, but the difference is that relativity is more satisfactory, and it goes on to explain it because you can't detect it within that frame of reference, so it would be undetectable. It's like, bro, come on, man. So we're about to move on to McToon's debate. We'll cover a little bit more of them.
Yeah.
Right. So
This is why I just go ahead.
all right, let's say, so you have the arm, let's say the arm of the
I hope you guys enjoy this. I know it's like kind of, I guess, nerdy or like a bit technical, but I think it's important with wizards running around like this to really clear the air and, school the Glovers.
thing, right? So here's the classic Michelson Morley. It actually had multiple mirrors. It wasn't really that long. Let's just take one of the arms. Let's say that this arm is going towards the ether flow, right? This way towards the camera. And so the light going this way would get slowed down while it went that way because it was fighting against the ether. Right? So then, but they didn't find this. And so they said, oh, that's because the length of this arm shrunk by that certain amount that we were that made it possible. And Lorentz got the correct amount that it had to shrink if the ether existed.
No. Period, McLooney Tunes. How much it need to shrink, period. That's what you don't get. You still don't get it, bro. But you're teaching us.
Right? The formula that he came up with was the right formula. It came out later to be completely correct.
Oh, it came out later to be so it was the right formula, and it came out later to be completely correct. Why is that? Now, an intelligent, logical person would say the reason that we think it's the correct formula is because it's relativity's explanation for Michelson-Morley and subsequent attempts to detect orbit or anything in motion. Duh, bro. Like, come on. It came out later to be correct. No, it didn't. When you ask them for an actual experiment that showed length contraction, they can't show it. Relativity itself says you could never prove length contraction. That's what it says. If you're still in the same frame of reference as the length contraction, you could never measure it. You won't even be able to tell it changed at all. It'll look exactly the same. You obviously know what one option is. It actually didn't change, and it is exactly the same. You want to talk about who has a crazy woo-woo religion?
But it didn't work. That was with Aether, and Whitsitt thinks that was actually the relativity explanation.
What was the Kennedy Thorndike experiment that they used different sized arms that totally debunked? So Whitsitt's using a failed ether model. And that's what I just realized tonight. It's like, oh, what he's saying is that, which is true, is that Lorentz took the fringe patterns that they were expecting, and then he used the contraction to get rid of them, which is what the experiment showed, right? So
Whitsitt's using a failed ether model. Bryant thinks, because I don't want to be mean in this stream, right? So you put it together for yourself, right? Bryant seems to think it makes sense that I'm using a failed ether model because I'm trying to believe in and invoke Lorentz's contraction with the ether when I literally don't think the earth is moving and I expected the negative results. Why would I need Lorentz's ether theory of contraction when I expect the negative result? Because the earth is not orbiting. I don't need the arm to be contracted by the ether. The earth isn't orbiting. Of course, there isn't a difference of like proportionate to 20 miles a second. We'll get into that in a second. In a world.
So basically, he's kind of getting this whole arm to contract by the same amount that they were expecting the fringe shift based on the movements. So he's kind of going backwards, but he ends up getting the same formula that Einstein got, which is kind of part of the confusion. I mean,
I'm confused. and he ends up getting the same equation Einstein got. Einstein literally took the equation from Lorentz. He didn't do anything. Einstein didn't even propose relativity. It was Henri Poincaré, and he took it. Ended up getting the same math, because Einstein's their god, right? So, Einstein got it. Lorentz just got lucky going backwards and got lucky with it. But no, Lorentz was way smarter than Einstein. He came up with an explanation to try to save the heliocentric model, but using a realistic attempt where it could actually be tested and stuff. Then he had to change everything in order to keep the Earth being a ball that orbits the sun in real physics that can be tested with actual experiment. He was going to have to upend all of electrodynamic theory. He was going to have to change everything. That's how bad it was. It was drastic. This changed everything. Any flat earther that tells you not to learn about this, beware of them, because they're either speaking with ill intent or with ego, right? This is the most important thing flat earthers should learn. Hands down. This was the most drastic thing that happened in physics. It's been coined the most famous failed experiment ever. It changed everything. They did not know what to do, bro. All of a sudden, there was concrete evidence that the Earth wasn't moving. They didn't know what to do. This story that it just showed the ether wasn't there, so they didn't want to accept it. No. It showed the Earth wasn't moving. And even if you threw the ether out, you had to explain why you didn't detect the movement, even without the ether. Do you understand? Because you're going against space and time. So whether it's filled with the ether or not, you're going against space. You have to detect some type of change based on your motion relative to orbit. They didn't. And the person tried to propose something that could actually be tested with experiment. And in order to do that, he even come up with something to make the math work at all, right? In theory, he had to change all of electrodynamic theory at the time. And then they went and tested it. And that's the test he's talking about. They went and tested it, and they didn't find length contraction. And they had to propose an entire electrodynamic theory to test it, right? And they never could find length contraction. The arm that was longer never shortened because it's not a real thing. Obviously, these AirPods don't shorten if I throw them, but they're going to look like they're the same size. That's not how it works. That's ridiculous. That's insanity. It's psychosis. It's like an actual problem to think that makes sense.
The same lens factor, right?
The same
factor. But
Lorentz's it's Lorentz's work to try to explain it within the realm of ether was fantastic work, because even though the ether still didn't explain it, that contraction was correct within relativity. And
thanks for playing. So you had the relativity uses the same contraction for Michelson-Morley. You're starting to get there. Oh man, no, he's not though. He literally doesn't understand it.
And so Einstein.
But it ended up being moving.
Globers, $sign Witsit gets it on Cash App, bro. Pay me my tuition, you guys. School is in session.
Moving relative observers instead of the actual thing physically contracting.
Yeah.
So nothing's contracting within our frame physically, right?
So
this is what Witsit doesn't get this, and he thinks that the thing should be and you'll see Craig kind of it's a little kind of difficult to follow what Witsit's trying to say. So just want to kind of set that up for when
all right.
Craig has.
What he's trying to say subconsciously is, I'm trying to create some type of narrative to subconsciously or to subtly let you know. Austin ends up destroying Fight the Flat Earth, and he doesn't know at all what he's saying, and he's double speaking. So I'm trying to give you a narrative to explain it away. Well, actually, it was just hard to follow what Austin was saying because he was all over the place, and Austin doesn't understand it. When we just demonstrated from the words of Einstein himself that neither one of these guys understand it at all, right? So it's kind of weird, huh? Isn't that kind of ironic? Isn't that like, what's that called again? Like, Bryant knows he doesn't understand this, but he's trying to tear me down and say I don't understand it. It's called projection. That's what it's called.
Go ahead.
Down to make it look like it didn't take longer. And that is, to this day, the very belief you have to hold to believe the Earth is a spinning ball using relativity.
Right, okay, you notice how I let you talk for a long time there and didn't cry about it. But so no, that's not actually what Einstein said. I would need the direct citation from you.
Look at how much of a little fanboy laugh that was, bro.
You have to hold to believe the Earth is a spinning ball using relativity.
Right, okay, you notice how I let you talk for a long time there and didn't cry about it. But yeah, so no, that's not actually what Einstein said. I would need the direct citation from you. When Einstein's talking about length contraction, he specifically, can do the maths and everything as well. So if we're talking about the length contraction of the equipment that was used, you know how long the arms were, the Mux and Morley equipment? Do you know how many meters they were?
I don't care.
Like I said, this is hilarious because watch how he's going through it where he's like, oh, wow. Like he knows he doesn't actually know.
Well, you should, because it's kind of important to your entire point,
I don't
Witzer. That's the
care.
thing. They were 11 meters long. And do you know the equation for length contraction, Witzer?
Instead of you detracting, we respond to the actual point that you have to
This
believe
is,
that's
okay,
time.
stop.
Yeah, you got this. You're not going to give me. I'm not going to play.
So this has an hour left.
So if you could just stop dancing around. So no,
We already covered this.
Uh-oh.
I want.
It was
like
up
his
there.
big show. It was big. No, it was a showstopper. He said, "This is Africa."
No.
So,
All right, so he didn't double down on it.
You know the irony. The irony is during Flattoberfest, this whole big graphic on the Michelson-Morley link contraction.
It was
like
up there.
his big show. It was big. No, it was a showstopper. He said, "This is more important, everybody, than everything I've talked about."
They watched my presentation at Flattoberfest and they watch all my streams. How's that not weird? How's that not objectively weird if I'm like a stupid, dishonest, crazy grifter that's the worst person in the world and I'm an idiot and I don't understand anything? Can we just use a little bit of logic here? How does that make any sense?
And he doesn't know the equation of what that governs that contraction.
I knew the equation. I misremembered it. Okay. I misremembered it in a different form. Yeah. You can't rebut my presentation at Flattoberfest either, though.
He's never done math. He
It's
can't do
qualitative.
I don't want to brag or anything. I'm just telling the truth. I am definitely rusty on like more complicated math. I haven't done it in my adult life much. Never had a profession doing it or anything like that. Okay. But I literally have an aptitude for math, bro. Like I used to get pulled out of class and accused of cheating on long form algebra because I would solve it in my head and I would finish the test first and make 100 and not show any work. So don't just baselessly attack me with insults, man. This is why I don't cover him. It's not like he's going to watch this stream, but it's not like he's going to stop doing it. He's not going to stop doing it. If I shared my iPad and went through all kinds of complicated math like super fast, he's not all of a sudden going to stop. It's just they have to tear me down. They have to tear flat earthers down. This isn't really about me. I don't care what grown men that have rocket ships in their background say about me. It's about like, I want the new people and the Globers to realize what you're condoning and what your side has to do. It's bad, bro. It's sad, honestly.
math.
Cool,
Now,
you know
now,
the equation.
now,
You know the
now is
equation.
my point. Now is where I can actually get to where I was going with this. So
You're not gonna
now
get
that we
the
know
point.
what the equation is, if we plug in the numbers for how fast the Earth is moving and the original length of the equipment, then what we actually find is the length contraction would only be 55 nanometers, which is 1/1000th the width of a human hair. That is not going to change the result with the magnitude that you require it to of.
Now it literally does, and like just like we read with Einstein, let me read it again, right? So he said that length contraction wouldn't change it what we needed, right? Let me just read so you guys know this is me reading from my. I wish I could share multiple screens. I guess that's kind of one of the problems with StreamYard. I could have them all pulled up, but okay. It says right here, it says, although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small. So, okay. And yet another point, it is shown by calculation that for a given velocity v with reference to the ether, this time t1 is different with the body when the body is moving perpendicularly to the planes of the mirrors from that resulting when the motion is parallel to these planes. Although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, Michelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference in which this difference should have been clearly detectable. Okay, so he's like 1/5000th of a width of a hair. I knew, though, I actually knew what relativity said. So in this debate, which we already covered, right? I'm like, yeah, it matches exactly. That's why it was proposed. Yeah, it's very, very small. It's light to my guy. It's two different like beams of light. Now watch what they do though here, and then this is going to give us background. I'll stop here in a few minutes, and then we'll go. It's important because really, when I debated them, I I didn't plan or anything. I just saw him in Discord and I jumped in there to call him out on some of this stuff. It turned into a debate.
That's practically imperceivable. So no, your argument about length contraction causing the results is wrong because the math of length contraction disagrees with you.
Okay, now this is objective, and I encourage. Now, what you'll see is FTFE will just deny it. So I'm not trying to.
Here's a hint, people. Whenever Witsit says objective, literally, and there's another one.
You're just obsessed with me.
He's a
Like in your chat, I'm trying to
lie or get something
I'm
wrong.
about to
wake
lie.
up the zealots that you modded the most toxic people I've ever seen in my entire life in your chat. I'm trying to wake up the audience, okay? In case you don't know, you just go research it. You won't get the truth from FTA. This is objective. That Einstein said that the reason we did not get the predicted value is because there's supposed to be a phase shift. The light is supposed to be behind the other light. We didn't see that. So he claimed that the measuring apparatus physically contracted and time slowed down.
That was Lorentz.
That was Lorentz, not Einstein.
But again, we just read relativity, or more so Einstein's writing. It's called, just to cite it for you guys, that's page, I think that's page 49 of Einstein's writing, which was published in 1920, and it's called Relativity, Special and General Theory. We just now read him saying, yes, that actually, that when they came up with the explanation that the arm contracted, they were right, but relativity explains it with a different interpretation. We just read Einstein saying that.
He just gets it all wrong.
And this is objective, Austin.
It literally is objective. Think about that, bro. How do you even keep showing your face on the internet?
Wasn't within relativity that the length contracted. It was within aether that the length contracted.
Mm-hmm.
It does it in both. You just can't detect it in that same frame according to relativity.
This is objective. Whenever Witsit says this is objective, he's about to be wrong.
Any attempt to use measuring rods or clocks to detect the motion of the Earth around the sun is a futile pursuit because of this illusion that takes place. So would you like to admit that relativity claims you cannot prove the Earth is moving around the Earth, from the Earth, because time slows down and matter contracts?
No, absolutely not, because the amount that time slows down and matter contracts is practically imperceivable. So much so that the equations, when you use relativistic speeds versus non-relativistic.
Now, this is where McLunington starts to realize, like, he is defending that relativity contracts things, and Bryant and him are saying that it doesn't claim that. So FTFE is right, and they're wrong. But he doesn't really know. He just knows that I know what I'm talking about. FTFE is smart enough to know that I didn't just make this up. I do know what I'm talking about, right? So during the debate, it gets a little bit more real. So they're kind of like struggling. You'll find out if you watch this, you'll find you'll just watch them. They're kind of freaking out and getting confused because they don't really know what's going on and they can't understand like that they're wrong. That's why Brian just straight up says like, I finally got it tonight. I finally understand what he's saying. It's like, oh, I'm so stupid that it took you weeks to finally understand what I'm saying. And then you still don't understand it. You know, it's like they have cognitive dissonance and don't have eyes to see. So when they hear the information, they can't actually hear it. They don't have ears to hear. So it's like, you know, the Dunning-Kruger and the cogdiss, like, literally doesn't allow them to compute it.
Equations actually give the same result. So no, relativity doesn't say that. And in fact, you can specifically measure the orbit of the Earth around the sun using relativity.
I think we're going to move on now because we've already watched that one before and that's an hour and a half in. I was only, basically you guys can tell me if you want me to at some point sit down and like do a watch party with you guys where we watch the whole thing. It's like, I feel like I'm letting them off easy because if I watch the whole thing, like I can expose every lie they said. But I want to show you guys the other debate that happened. So we're going to move to that because it's already an hour and a half in. That was important to do, though, to kind of show you guys some of like what's going on with relativity. I'll do a show here soon where I really show you all the references. I'm going to make new memes and make a whole new presentation. I'm really going to break down what's going on so everyone can understand it. And it's like you just need to understand the basic parts of it and know where it says in the paper and what it says in context so that you can equip yourself. You don't have to like study relativity for 3 years or anything like that. You just have to understand like the basic parts of it. And it just destroys the heliocentric model. It just destroys it. Okay. So we'll add this. I'll have to find where I'm at.
Or double speak and stuff. We have to start to sophistry where you use fallacious. Got that, McDude. You heard that you can't detect it.
Yeah.
If he was like incredibly detecting or measuring it,
just the principles of celestial navigation. Things it all the time.
Professor Clive, Dr. Yeah,
You don't feel the movement
What a liar.
give it a shot.
back for it. And you brought up the tree.
The constant motion. Okay.
Yo, my
Yeah,
first question is,
Thanks a lot, buddy.
why, McToon, why are you so obsessed with flat Earth?
It's my hobby. I have a lot of fun.
What a liar.
Weird. All right. Do you agree that relativity says that you cannot prove that the Earth is moving around the sun from the Earth in order? So I'm going to speed it up just a little bit. But yeah, here we go. This is a new debate that I had. He didn't know I was going to come in here or anything. Right? Detect it.
No, I do not.
All right. Do you agree that relativity says that you cannot prove that the Earth is moving around the sun from the Earth in order to detect it?
No, I do not.
Okay. So he said, no, I do not. After he watched the debate with FTFE. Now watch this. Really, how do you detect the Earth moving around the sun from the Earth? Yeah, McToon did stream this on his channel as well. And I would say you could see his facial expressions and stuff. The only problem is, like, I think it clips a lot. I think the audio clips a lot. So you guys can tell me if you want me to play where you can see McToon's facial expressions and stuff, because I actually haven't watched that. I bet it probably is pretty funny. But we'll just do that.
There's many ways to do that.
Seems like you would just name one.
Parallax would be a good way. Yeah.
Oh, parallax is not actually answering the question. So I'm not saying looking at the sky and assuming it. I'm saying detecting or measuring it. According to relativity, that's impossible.
Well, so you say, but
Oh, so relativity. Relativity.
it's not what relativity says.
It literally is.
It's not. But you go ahead and give it a shot.
All right, I'll enlighten you. See, I watched a part of your little video. So he said, this is where he says, no, it's not. Now read this. I think that my boy Gleam pointed out exactly where it says this. So it's pretty funny. All right. So I said, that's what relativity says. McToon said, that's not what relativity says. And then I said, that's literally what relativity says. Let me check the super chats. I think we should raid Mythbusters for a debate. I'm not sure what that is. If you're talking about Discord or something, but I could be down. Depends on this situation. Ethan W. Oh, thank you for the super chat. I didn't say your name. Sorry. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Jawa's Sniper Nest. Austin, we could watch you debate flat Earth for 1,000 hours. Definitely do the full breakdown. Much love, Pony Boy Bear. Okay, cool. Thank you for the input. Thank you for the 911 super chat. I think, yeah, cool. I think it is like a good thing, to cover these debates. I'm realizing that people kind of need to hear them broke down because there's so much fallacies in it that go so fast because it's so dishonest from one side that it's like so many fallacies and it just has to be like really broken down and it would take a while, but I think it would help people out. So I'll do it even though it's kind of exhausting in a way. All right. So McToon said, that's not what relativity says. And then I said, that is literally what relativity says. Here's what Einstein said. The struggle so violent in the early days of science between the views of Ptolemy and Copernicus would then be quite meaningless. Either coordinate system could be used with equal justification. The two sentences, the sun is at rest and the earth moves, or the sun moves and the earth is at rest, would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems. Albert Einstein, The Evolution of Physics, From Early Concepts to Relativity and Quanta, 1938. This is 15 years after Michelson-Gale Pearson allegedly detects the rotation of the Earth. He literally sits here and says, many years after that, you couldn't, no, they're interchangeable. Like the Earth being at rest. He literally says the sun, the two sentences, the sun is at rest and the Earth moves, or the sun moves and the Earth is at rest, would simply mean two different conventions concerning two different coordinate systems. Albert Einstein, Evolution of Physics, From Early Concepts to Relativity and Quanta, 1938. Anyway, moving on. we'll play his facial expressions. If it starts clipping, we'll go back to the other one.
Like from personal experience, and you
They use because it works well on a ship.
Get on top of that plane.
Fies things, but it doesn't.
Know this, and I think you started to go. It
With-
quite literally does that.
More recent measurements have shown no drift detected with
Non sequitur to the actual
the instrument.
and then
Our electrical dynamical, I believe you said.
make sure you
Dave,
jump
yeah.
in with
Yeah.
your cheerleading,
Fies things.
but not enough for it to matter. Now, you and Bryant for the first like hour and stick are
And
all
with-
now so much better off.
Please let
I will.
Thank you
Y'all,
for your
please-
profound
please
input.
let
We
him
are
and
all
Whitney-
now so much better off.
please let Austin and McToon go for a while, man.
So
I
so
don't
this is
even
what
trust
happened, right?
Bryant.
FTFE was arguing that that relativity says that the arms did contract.
What Ethan said, keep rocking it, bro. Will do. Will, thank you for the super chat. $2 super chat. Josh, much love.
But not enough for it to matter. Now, you and Bryant for the first like hour of your little show were lying, and you actually wasn't a lie because it wasn't intentional. You just lost per usual, but you were saying that he was actually talking about Lorentz and the ether. He wasn't talking about relativity, but of course, the whole time FTFE was talking about relativity and was getting destroyed. And the fact that you can sit here and pretend that he didn't get anything wrong kind of shows that you're being dishonest. Yeah.
Well, I would not say that he was 100% accurate in everything he did. There was certainly a lot of confusion because you were talking about some different things, and I think it was getting conflated between Lorentz contraction in the Aether model and Lorentz's application in relativity. And
So he got things wrong, but it was my fault. It was actually my fault.
there was some
What's the
confusion
difference?
between them. Well, in Lorentz contraction in the Aether model is that Lorentz contraction actually physically happens. That's the claim that Lorentz made. And Einstein rejected it because there's no electrical, chemical, or electrical dynamical, I believe he said, reason for that to happen. And those types of things then said other reasons as well. They
Hey, $20 super chat. Crisis King, you finally won me over to Flat Earth. God bless you, dude. Hey, round of applause for Crisis King. I don't know if it's $20 or what it is, but welcome over here. I'm glad to hear that. That's why I do it. Thank you. Much love. And we have a new round of applause for Nickel Boy. We have a new member. Welcome to the Miswits. Thank you for becoming a member. Much love, brother. Did you get my orb video email? I have not. Thank you for the super chat, transport inquiry podcast. I don't know. I don't think I've seen that. I've checked I've caught up on like the last, I think, couple weeks of Gmail. There's so many emails. I'm trying to catch up on them all. And then now I have to go through Proton Mail and the rest of Gmail as well. I don't know where you sent it, but preferably if anyone wants to email me now, email witsitgetsit@gmail.com. All right, let's get back into it. Oh, yeah. So you heard him say, he said that it doesn't claim that it physically shrinks. Do I have to do this again? I'm going to do it again. Because I don't want any excuses. We'll do it this way. Okay. I always lose it. All right, here we go. Although the estimated difference between these two times is exceedingly small, Michelson and Morley performed an experiment involving interference in which this difference should have been clearly detectable. But the experiment gave a negative result, a fact very perplexing to physicists. Lorentz and Fitzgerald rescued the theory from this difficulty, which is the negative result, because it was sensitive enough to detect it and it didn't. So that's the difficulty. Rescued the theory from this difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, the amount of contraction being just sufficient to compensate for the difference in the motion above. Comparison with the discussion in section 11 shows that also from the standpoint of the theory of relativity, this solution of the difficulty was the right one. What was the solution that was the right one again? Let's see here. That the body relative to motion, right? So save the theory from difficulty by assuming that the motion of the body relative to the ether produces a contraction of the body in the direction of motion, and the amount of contraction being just sufficient to compensate for the difference in the time mentioned above. That's what it did to solve the difficulty. And then it says again, comparison with section 11 shows that also from the standpoint of the theory of relativity, the solution of the difficulty was the right one. But on the basis of the theory of relativity, the method of interpretation is incomparably more satisfactory. According to this theory, there is no such thing as a specially favored or unique coordinate system to occasion the introduction of the ether idea, and hence there can be no ether drift, nor any experiment with which to demonstrate it. Here, the contraction of moving bodies that he just now said is exactly what relativity claims. The contraction of moving bodies follows from the two fundamental principles of the theory. Without the introduction of particular hypotheses, and as the prime factor involved in this contraction, we find not the motion in itself, to which we cannot attach any meaning, but the motion with respect to the body of reference chosen in the particular case in points. Thus, for a coordinate system moving with the Earth, the mirror system of Michelson and Morley is not shortened. A coordinate system moving with the Earth, the mirror system of Michelson and Morley is not shortened, but it is shortened for a coordinate system which is at rest relatively to the sun. Okay, which of course, what they need to understand is light is helping you establish a nearly a different reference frame. And so it's clearly stating right here, it clearly states it, that it uses the same explanation of contraction. The difference is that when you are in the coordinate system moving with the Earth, you won't detect it. It's shortened for a coordinate system which is at rest relatively to the sun. You don't detect the motion. That's the difference. The difference is that you won't detect the contraction in Lorentz's theory. Or in Lorentz's theory, you would be able to detect the contraction in the same frame. In relativity, you wouldn't ever be able to test the contraction or detect it. Does everyone understand? So no matter how convincingly they say it, no matter how many times they say it, no matter how many insults they throw in and call me stupid, call me incompetent, I know it's easy to get caught up in their wizardry and their spell. They say it so confidently and so smug, and they insult me so much, and they talk down, right? And they're like, he just doesn't understand anything. He gets it all wrong. And they're so confident, you almost get caught up in it where you're like, is Austin wrong? Is he actually like losing this debate, right? It's a tactic. And that tactic is called sophistry. It's where you use fallacious arguments with an intent to deceive the viewer, okay? Globies chant over and over, FE has no proof, no experiments, etc. But Michelson and Morley is literally an experiment that proves Earth doesn't move. Yeah, check them out. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Sky Scion. Yeah, it's evidence that the Earth does not move for sure. You would have to claim something insane and magical is happening, and that's what they did. So, I just wanted to make sure everyone got that. I know I've read it a few times, but it's like, it seems like, because what's going to happen is they're just going to keep saying it anyway. And I'm going to end this debate. I'm going to tell him multiple times, and he's just going to keep saying it anyway. It's very insane.
They did away with that.
You know, he won't come out and publicly say, oh, I was wrong. It was right. Actually, it does say this. It does contract. You know, you'll never get that. But just so you know, they claim to this day that matter physically contracts. Like when they say, oh, this electron went through this tunnel faster than the other one. It's actually because it was in the direction of its motion. The tunnel contracted, so the electron didn't have as far to go. So even though it just looked like the electron, quote unquote, went faster, actually the tunnel shrank. You just can't tell or measure that it shrank because it's in the same frame of reference. They don't even understand relativity, bro. They don't understand it. They shouldn't be talking about it. That's why I bring it up everyone should understand it before they're super confident that they know the Earth's a spinning ball. It's very, very relevant.
In relativity, Lorentz
What I found is tons of physicists don't understand it.
is a factor that modifies things, but it doesn't actually change the length of something in your reference frame.
Yeah. So I know you want to pretend you know what you're talking about, but so Lorentz proposed a Lorentz contraction due to the ether, right? And I said this in the debate like 4 times because FTFE was like incredibly lost. And you did your little sophistry thing where you're like, oh, he
Why
got
don't you
part
just
of it
get to your
right. That
point
was
instead of
crazy.
patting yourself on the back?
He's scared to hear me expose
I know
him.
you got to pat
Expose him.
yourself on the back. Keep going.
No, I'm
We
just
all want to hear
exposing
you talk about.
Like he knew I was about to expose all that stuff that we just covered, some of it, right? I was about to start exposing him, and that's why I came in there. But he just kept interrupting me. Wait till you see by the end of the debate how much he interrupts.
Like, oh, he
Why
got
don't you
part
just
of it
get to your
right. That
point
was
instead of
crazy.
patting yourself on the back?
I am exposing.
I know you got to
So-
pat yourself on the back. Keep going.
No, I'm
We
just
all want to hear
exposing
you talk about how awesome you think you
You're
are.
afraid to hear
Yeah,
me
go ahead.
expose you.
Just jump right to your point, though. How about that?
I was almost there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you
Just next
pause
time
it
skip
saying
right
like,
to the
oh,
points.
what's it almost? You're scared. What's it was almost right for a second. That was getting scary or whatever. But I was right the whole
Yeah,
time when I
you
said
were almost
Lorentz.
right. Yeah, you had me confused for a minute. You did.
Oh, You're scared. You're scared. So I pointed out that.
See, so now it's hitting him. He's like, dang, I have to keep this illusory confidence for the audience, but I wasn't expecting Whitsitt to jump in here, right? So he's already starting to freak out.
Lorentz proposed the Lorentz contraction, and he said it was the ether that was doing it. And then Einstein took the Lorentz contraction and integrated it into relativity, but did not say it was the ether. Now,
Yeah.
your model does claim that objects physically shorten in length. That
Not
you
within your
are in the
reference
same
frame.
frame of reference as the object that shortened. Therefore, all space, including the observer themselves, also shorten. So you are not able to detect or measure it because you're in the same frame that shortened.
Yeah, it doesn't shorten from your frame of reference. Where in Lorentz's Aether version, it does.
Right. Which actually means that you can't detect it within your frame, but in reality, it actually shortens. That's why they claim the electrons go faster through the tunnels, because the tunnel actually shortened. We just couldn't tell because we're in the same frame of reference as the tunnel. It's duh.
Again, relativity says that it did physically shrink and shorten, but that since you're in that frame of reference, you also shorten, and so does all the space. So you can't detect it.
Yeah, it's it. Outside your reference frame is where you need to be to see it.
Yeah. So is light a different reference frame than we are? The speed of light?
Is light a different when you
The
are
speed of
within your,
light.
yeah, when you are within your reference frame, light is what you see within your reference frame. Right?
Yeah.
You
So is
see-
like the speed of light establishing a different absolute reference frame?
no, within your reference frame, the speed of light is the speed of light. It can't go faster.
This is a very important part. Okay. So now general relativity claims that there are no absolute frames of reference. Special relativity basically treats light like an absolute frame of reference, right? Although the idea of relativity, there is no frame of reference. But if you're going to create a theory where you say everything is relative, you have to have some standard of comparison that is absolute. So the doublespeak they say is, well, light is absolute. Light is absolute. The speed of light is absolute, but it's not an absolute frame of reference, because they have to say there's no such thing as a frame of reference for their theory to even like be consistent. They have to claim there's no such thing as absolute frame of reference and everything is relative, but they treat the speed of light in special relativity as the absolute frame of reference that everything else is compared to. And that's why it's important to understand that in Michelson-Morley. And it's important to understand what Einstein's saying here, which is that clearly he states they did have to say the length of the arm contracted in Michelson-Morley, but he doesn't understand this.
Is light relative reference frame or absolute?
Within your reference frame, light cannot go faster than the speed of light.
The answer is that it's the absolute, right? So in relativity, you need everything to be relative, and you have to have an absolute frame for everything to be relative to. That's c, the constant speed of light. And he applied this to Michelson-Morley, the same exact mechanism, the Lorentz
He's starting to freak out. Sorry, I won't pause too much.
contraction, and that it actually shortened, the arm shortened. but you can't tell because you're in that reference frame. The only difference was he threw the ether out. Okay, he threw the ether out, and he said the reason that there was a slight friendship detected was, margin of error.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so that's what
margin of
actually
error.
happened. So
Yeah,
So-
and more recent measurements have shrunk that margin of error significantly by billions of times, and still no drift detected within the margin of error of the instruments.
That literally hurts them in reality because it gets more and more precise and shows that there's no orbit of the Earth. It's supposedly going 18.9 miles per second or whatever, 18.97 or something like that. But and the Michelson-Morley was sensitive enough to detect 2 miles a second, which is why Einstein said it would be very, very small difference, but they came up with a way that they'd be able to detect it. It was a very impressive experiment, effectively, is what he's saying. Right? You have to have, like, I will give Einstein's writings this. You have to have higher level reading comprehension to understand what he's saying. Right? And so he's like, wow, they came up with a good experiment where they were able to do this. And it was able to detect as small as 2 miles a second, even though it's closer to 20 miles a second, the Earth allegedly orbits the sun. Now he's saying that they've come up with even more precise and more precise and more precise measurements than that, and they still never detect anything. So in reality, outside of fairy tale land where they wave their relativity wand and say, oh, the universe is an illusion, the more precise we get, the more it debunks the Earth orbiting. That's reality. And they will definitely not accept that, but that is reality.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool non sequitur to the actual point, right? So the point here is that you're wrong when you claim that relativity does not claim that the arm contracted in Michelson-Morley, because it quite literally does.
What we're gonna do is we're gonna pause until everyone goes and smashes the likes button. We have 340 people. We don't have 340 likes though, so I'll just sit here and wait on you guys. Hey, will you smash the like button? We're just gonna pause. We're gonna pause the show till you smash the like button. We're super censored, man. You got to help our brother out. One way to support the channel, if you can't financially, is to press the like button and to share the videos. I know they're long. I'm going to start making edit videos. I don't have much time. I don't really have the ability to hire anyone to make edit videos. The problem with that is also I don't think everyone will make good edited videos, so I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to start waking up really early in the morning, working all day, and try to fit in working out, and then the baby, blah, blah, blah. Long story short. I'll give you short videos to share, but if you can't support financially, the way that you can help support is with liking the videos and sharing them. Aries failure is the best proof that ether/sky is rotating and not the Earth. This is true, or arguably one of the best. Yes. GeoTruthins, thank you for the I think $10. I don't know. Thank you for the super chat, brother. Much love. Let me check the likes. Are you guys lacking on me? People are dropping. They're like, I'll rather drop out than try to press the likes or wait. I'll never like. Truth should be free. I shouldn't even have to pay a like. 243, not bad. Now we know how many Globers are in here. Just smash the like button. Why are you anti-flat earthers in here? Oh, it is going to Globers. I'll give them a break. Let's continue.
Relativity does not claim that the arm contracted in Michelson-Morley, because it quite literally does.
With
it just
the
claims that
caveat.
you can't detect it.
Yeah, with the caveat of within your reference frame, it does not.
Okay, so that's a non.
That you can't detect it in your reference frame. You just want to phrase it the other way because you're using a fallacy, which is a red herring fallacy, and you're using a non sequitur to the point to try to deceive the audience.
It's detected.
Yeah, with the caveat of within your reference frame, it does not.
Okay, so that's a non sequitur. So when I would now, of course, Bryant was super lost, and he didn't know this, and I think you started to put together that Bryant was super lost, but you were also lost because relativity does claim that it contracts. It's very well known. In fact, it's disputed. I talked to a physicist not too long ago. He said he doesn't believe in special relativity and the claim that there's a Lorentz contraction, and it's oftentimes disputed in his field, right? But the point is that is the current paradigm. It claims that things contract when in motion. So that means that it's also applied to Michelson-Morley. So in relativistic application, the arm did shorten and contract. You just could not tell within that same reference frame.
Yeah, we're not in that reference frame.
So then, according to relativity, you could never use measurement on the Earth to detect the movement of the Earth around the sun. Duh.
No, actually, that's not the case at all, Austin. That's specifically Einstein was talking about only Michelson-Morley. He was not talking about other particular experiments. He was only
All right, let's just hear this again. This is very important. Globers, we're schooling the Globers.
No, actually, that's not the case at all, Austin. That's specifically Einstein was talking about only Michelson-Morley. He was not talking about other particular experiments. He was only...
Oh, I forgot I have the virtual webcam. He was talking about only Michelson-Morley. Do you guys remember that? Only Michelson-Morley. So I'm going to pull it up again. Unfortunately, this is the world that we live in where I actually have to do this. So, okay, I'll rewind it for a second and then I'm going to pull it up again so we can read it. He clearly wasn't only talking about Michelson-Morley, obviously.
So in relativistic application, the arm did shorten and contract. You just could not tell within that same reference frame.
Yeah, we're not in that reference frame.
So then, according to relativity, you could never use measurement on the Earth to detect the movement of the Earth around the sun. Duh.
No, actually, that's not the case at all, Austin. That's specifically Einstein was talking about only Michelson-Morley. He was not talking about other particular experiments. He was only talking about Michelson-Morley.
Very
He
confident.
was not talking about... That's specifically Einstein was talking about only Michelson-Morley. He was not talking about other particular experiments. He was only talking about Michelson-Morley.
This is another...
Okay, so let's come over here. I think this is going to work. Hopefully this works. So we're gonna transition. Oh yeah. Okay. Here it is. In one of he was only talking about Michelson-Morley, right? We played it 3 times. He was very specific about it. In one of the most notable of these attempts, it's plural, right? Okay, well, what does it say here? Well, to the reference, or has reference to the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments, right? So plural here again. Plural. Terrestrial experiments. Plural. So that means that whether or not the motion of the Earth, the orbit, can be made perceptible in an experiment on the Earth. We've already remarked that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled with this negative result for the reasons now to be discussed. The inherited prejudice about time and space, which is what I'm trying to explain this whole time. Again, then he says, in one of the most notable of these attempts, Michelson devised. Okay, very simple, right? Everyone understands that? It's any terrestrial experiment. That's what relativity says. And the fundamental understanding of relativity would necessitate that you concede that. So that's just a talking point that you have that isn't true.
One of your scripts that you say that is just wrong. So actually what he says is he's given a speech in Japan, right? And he's saying Michelson-Morley is what started him on his pursuit to eventually propose special relativity.
Yeah.
And since then, I've come to the conclusion that no optical experiment can detect it. But he has an additional quote. So for one, it's not just Michelson-Morley. It's any optical experiment. He said Michelson-Morley started him. And then since then, he's come to the conclusion that no optical experiment can do it. Right? It just takes a little bit of...
So we're going to cover that part too, right? So this is just so you guys know what you're going to deal with. There's 2 quotes. One of them is Einstein's giving a speech. He's explaining to people, I think it was a group of students at a university, and he's explaining what led him to come up with special relativity. And he was like, he came across Michelson-Morley. He's like, man, this is a perplexing result, And so he wanted to come up with a way to explain it. And that led him through many, many years of research, trying to figure out what's going on, how to explain it, many years. And then, so this is the actual quote here. While I was thinking of this problem in my student years, I came to know the strange result of Michelson's experiment. Soon, I came to the conclusion that our idea about the motion of the Earth with respect to the ether is incorrect. if we admit Mickelson's null result as a fact, this was the first path which led me to the special theory of relativity. The first path. Since then, since when? The first path. Since then, I have come to believe that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment. Okay, moving on. So that's the optical experiment one that they always have that script to say, right?
in Japan, right? And he's saying,
And I just want you guys, because this is, it's schooling the Globers, but they maybe aren't in a state to learn. It's also schooling people that are new and open and stuff like that, right? And so the response to this quote is, oh, flat earthers leave that last part off where it says, though the earth is revolving around the sun. Well, yeah, he thought the earth was revolving around the sun. So this, what he's saying is, even like basically you cannot actually use an optical experiment to detect it, but I believe the earth is revolving around the sun anyway. That's what this text is saying. They're like, oh, you leave the last part off and you cherry pick it. No, leaving the last part off doesn't refute our point. It makes us stronger. Our point is that even though he believed the earth is moving around the sun, he said you can't use anything to detect it, right? That's their first talking point. Second talking point, because this is for new people that find out when they start looking into flat earth, who do they get suggested? They get suggested certain hit pieces on flat earth, and they get suggested Professor Dave, then Simon Dan, and then you start, if you try to keep going, you get to like people like McToon. That's why it's important that I cover them. I have to take one for the team, even though it drags my vibration down, right? The second talking point that you'll come across is what he's saying now, which is he was only talking about Michelson-Morley, right? Well, just read it. He says Michelson-Morley, right? And he says, this was the first path which led me to the special theory of relativity. And since then, I've come to believe that the motion of the earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment. Okay, moving on.
Mickelson is wrong. So actually what he says is he's given a speech in Japan, right? And he's saying Michelson-Morley is what started him on his pursuit to eventually propose special relativity.
Yeah.
And since then, I've come to the conclusion that no optical experiment can detect it. But he has an additional quote. So for one, it's not just Michelson-Morley, it's any optical experiment. He said Michelson-Morley started him, and then since then, he's come to the conclusion that no optical experiment can do it. Right? It just takes a little bit of reading comprehension to know what you said is not true. And then he also has a quote where he says, no terrestrial experiment has been able to detect the motion of the earth. All results were negative. And prior to relativity, it was difficult to become reconciled.
What's the date? What's the date of that quote? And what paper did he write it in?
And he wrote about the theories of special and general theory of relativity. So relativity, special and general theory, like 1916 or something. And I saw you also lie about that and claim that I didn't know where it came from and that I said it came from 1952 or something. I've literally never said that. But I'll tell you where you got that. I'll tell you where you got that. You heard me say something about 1950s from Kosho, who claims that's when he found out, Einstein found out that the Machian principle would actually not work.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll give you that.
Yeah, so that's
I may have
you were wrong the whole
misremembered that.
2 hours. Yeah.
I wish I should play it where he does that. The reason I brought that up is he went full screen. He was like, he has to lie and he just makes stuff up. And he's such an idiot. He has no idea what he's talking about. He doesn't even know where this quote comes from. He definitely doesn't understand it. He thinks it comes from 1952 or something. It's like lying. It's lying to try to convince people that like I'm stupid and uninformed when you're projecting. But anyway, we'll move on.
May have misremembered. Let me tell you this, Austin. I may have misremembered when you claimed that to have been written. It was written in part of the paper that he wrote in 1915.
And that is not actually true. I think he originally began to write it in 16, but that paper, which you guys can look up, and I'm going to create again, the Telegram is going to have all kinds of resources. We're going to like body bag the globe and the heliocentric model in 2023. And we're going to have like lessons and stuff because we got to just, it's over. It's been enough. Now everyone knows if they get to the info, there's no turning back. You can't unsee it, right? That's the next step. But anyway, it is actually published in 1920. But anyway, moving on.
I think it was 16 actually. I think he summarized and gave commentary on his two theories in 1916.
And then it was officially published in 20.
It's relativity, special and general theories. Yeah. But nevertheless, that's not. But the point was that you didn't just like kind of say it. You were like mocking and ridiculing how incredibly ignorant I was. And
I've already retracted it. You keep living in the past if you need.
Well, you didn't retract how you treated me and how you acted. You retracted that you accidentally might have misremembered. But anyway,
about how you did it. right?
Okay.
But anyway, the point is,
Did it? You keep living in the past if you need.
well, it's much more about how you did it, right?
Okay.
But anyway, the point is here that you keep on saying your script that he was just talking about Mickelson Morley, and that's not true. All you have to do is read the transcript of the speech, and he's clearly explaining that since then, no optical experiment. But there's another quote you guys love to ignore where he explains terrestrial experiment, the one we're talking about here, and he says that they all have negative results, and that prior to relativity being put forth, it was difficult to become reconciled with these results. So my question for you is, what did relativity do to reconcile those negative results?
About the motion of the Earth orbiting the
Yeah.
sun?
Mhm.
I don't know. But definitely the rotation of the Earth is confirmed using the SEG.
Just to remind everyone here, at the start of the debate, he said, no, that was completely wrong. And I said, do you agree relativity says you can't actually detect the motion of the Earth from the Earth? No, that's completely wrong. I'm like, the orbit around the sun. You can't prove that the Earth is going around the sun from the Earth. No, you're completely wrong. Now he's already backtracking it. And just so you guys know, this is the quote we're talking about here, which we just read in context. I pulled up the PDF. It is to the question whether or not the motion of the Earth in space can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments. We have already remarked that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Before the theory of relativity was put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this negative result for results now to be discussed. Okay, moving on.
The
Yeah.
sun?
Mhm.
About the motion of the
Do being put forth, it was difficult to become reconciled with these results. So my question for you is, what did relativity do to reconcile those negative results?
about the motion of the Earth orbiting the
Yeah.
sun?
Mhm.
I don't know. But
Now, the reason that's important, he doesn't know, but we're just going to pretend it never happened. The reason it's important is because he was ridiculing and everything and saying that it didn't claim that the arm contracted, but that's the actual answer. Is that relativity claims that in Michelson-Morley, the reason it didn't detect the orbit of the Earth, even though it was 10 times more sensitive than it needed to be to detect the alleged orbit of the Earth around the sun, was because the arm shortened, right? So you couldn't tell. And that's why I'm asking, like, you keep denying that. Well, then can you explain what was it reconciling? Then, like, how did relativity reconcile Michelson-Morley?
but definitely the rotation of the Earth is confirmed using the Sagnac effect. So
Oh, well, the Sagnac effect doesn't detect the orbit. So,
yeah, it's not meant to detect the orbit.
so that was a red herring fallacy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, though, Witz, you got to remember this. Your position isn't whether or not relativity measured the orbit.
So we just blatantly used that fallacy, got called out for it, and then just skates past it. We're talking about the orbit. He tries to shift it to a red herring fallacy is where something has the illusion of being relevant to the subject, but it's actually intended to divert or obfuscate.
The rotation of the Earth is confirmed using the Sagnac effect. So
Oh, well, the Sagnac effect doesn't detect the orbit. So,
yeah, it's not meant to detect the orbit.
so that was a red herring fallacy.
Yeah. So, I mean, the thing is, though, Witz,
Yeah.
you got to remember this. Your position isn't whether or not relativity measured the movement of the orbit of the Earth around the sun, because that doesn't really, whether or not you affect that particular measurement or establishment, right? That doesn't change that you didn't provide any evidence for the shape of the Earth or the movement of the Earth. All that you've done, if all of this works for you, Austin, all you've done is taken away one of many of the different measurements of the orbit of the Earth around the sun. You really didn't accomplish much, even if you did accomplish this.
So this is sophistry, where you use fallacious arguments with an intention to deceive, right? Because
Not at all. No, Austin,
it's
your
textbook
position,
sophistry.
you claim specifically that the Earth is stationary. You've said it. You did not
Yeah.
do anything to establish that. Nothing at all. You are specifically focusing on the orbit of the Earth around the sun. So the best you get, Austin, is a globe geocentrist like Robert Sungenis. That's
Okay.
what you're basically arguing for. And while I've been listening to you talk about this, I keep scratching my head. I'm like, is Austin actually a geocentrist? Because Austin, when you posted the
More
Saros
sophistry.
cycles, and you talk about Saros
Yeah.
cycles and geocentric this and all about how
It's
eclipses
based on
are
the
predicted.
globe.
Yeah, you
No.
constantly referenced globe geocentric things, and I'm like, what the heck are you actually a geocentrist in the closet? And you don't want to say it because the other
Oh,
flat
this is-
earthers wouldn't like it. That was
There's
what
a
I
lot
was
of
thinking.
sophistry. Oh, you're still
That's
not
just
done.
what I
Huh.
was thinking, Austin. Just so you know,
Well,
if that's not the case,
I would
then-
leave the
then good for
thinking
you.
up to those competent, my guy. So instead of changing the
I
subject,
just want to make it public real quick. I just want to make it public real quick. I think the flat Earth community would humbly accept Austin Whitsitt as a geocentrist.
Well,
There you go. The door's open, Austin.
The Earth is a stationary topographical plane, right? So the point is, though, I've discovered, right, that to discuss this with the anti-flat earthers, you have to go through the painful process of getting them to even understand their position.
Sure.
And as MC Toon has just now vocalized, he actually doesn't know it. And so it's not really worth me going and arguing with you about the horizon and dissecting your doublespeak and stuff. We have to start from step one. And step one is you guys claim you know for a fact that the Earth moves around the sun. Now, that means you don't understand your belief because relativity says you cannot know it for a fact. And when I ask you, here's
like
the
I said-
question, do you, instead of changing the subject back to your little diversion, do you want me to give you the answer to the question that you don't know?
No, I don't. I don't like
You don't
your
even
answer.
want to know.
No, but you can. I'm sure you will. But let me just
Yeah,
reiterate.
you just have a script. You think
Even
script-
if-
Did you hear? Like, dude, do you hear that? He wants to keep on spreading misinformation, and so he admitted he didn't know. So I'm like, okay, do you want to know the answer? No, I don't want to know.
One is you guys claim you know for a fact that the Earth moves around the sun. Now, that means you don't understand your belief because relativity says you cannot know it for a fact. And when I ask you, here's
like
the
I said-
question, do you, instead of changing the subject back to your little diversion, do you want me to give you the answer to the question that you don't know?
No, I don't. I don't like
You don't
your
even
answer.
want to know.
No, but you can. I'm sure you will. But let me just
Yeah, you
reiterate.
just have a script. You think
Even
for
if-
exposing yourself.
Even if you established all these things, that's just one of many ways that we can establish that the Earth orbits the sun. There's many different ways. So you didn't establish positive evidence of stationariness. All that you do, if you were to succeed in this, would be to address one of many ways that we know that the Earth is rotating the sun.
Okay. So you keep saying that when I asked you brought up parallax, which I'll drop. You should have already known this, but maybe you should go watch my stream on geocentrism. But I'll drop some information for you in a second that explains a neo-Tychonic system. Will explain any parallax, or of course it wouldn't be called parallax though. That very name begs the question. But if the stars were just changing their position, we have the same observation. But it doesn't really matter. You're changing the subject because the point is that relativity doesn't make a claim about one specific experiment or anything. It's just in general. It's about a frame of reference. So it has nothing to do with what it is you're doing inside that frame of reference. Everything inside that frame of reference adheres to the same relativistic laws, right? And that is that time dilates and slows down and that matter contracts and shortens. They're linked. Therefore, you cannot use measuring devices. Any measurement.
Are you guys saying that the 1.25 is too fast? Do you guys want me to keep it on the 1.25 or you want me to slow it down to the normal speed?
Device or apparatus on the Earth to detect this motion around the sun. It's a very simple concept.
All right. So you still didn't establish the stationariness of the Earth though, which is your
Okay.
position. So and your Ptolemaic stuff. That's again geocentric globe. Is that your position?
No,
you've already got the door open. You don't need to be scared. They will accept you. So said whoever, if that's your position.
Yeah, so I don't need to go to that position, but what you don't understand
did.
is it's very
You
ironic. What you're doing
referenced
is
You already
doing
referenced
a
it.
text.
also.
What you're doing is a textbook shifting the burden of proof because what I'm explaining is how Einstein explained that all the attempts to detect this motion of the Earth around the sun were negative results. Well, a negative result would be evidence for a stationary
No,
Earth.
it's not. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's a nothing result. It's a we didn't measure anything, therefore we don't know anything. That's the best you have. A negative result
If
is
the
we
Earth was
don't know
stationary, what would
anything.
you measure? If the Earth was stationary, what would you measure?
That's on you. To
No, I'm
determine
asking
how to
in
measure
that
stationariness.
experiment. If that in that experiment, if the Earth were stationary, what would you measure?
in the Michelson-Morley experiment? Because that's
Yeah,
what
what
he's
would you
talking
measure?
about.
What would
What
you
would
measure?
you measure if the Earth was stationary with the Michelson-Morley experiment? You'd have the same thing. As long
Okay.
as the aether is moving at the same rate as the Earth, right? It'd have to be stationary along with the Earth.
Well, see, this is what you also.
So he says that you would measure the same thing. You would get, that's what you would get. If the Earth was stationary, you would get what you got. You would get the negative result you got in Michelson-Morley. And after being corrected that he wasn't only talking about Michelson-Morley, he then proceeds to say it again and say he was only talking about Michelson-Morley when he's talking about any terrestrial experiment, which we just showed the paper. Think about that. Like, it just keep lying in the face of being refuted live. It's a very crazy phenomenon. Continuing on.
You Globers don't understand, because this is why it's only like anti-flat earther
Yeah,
enthusiasts.
just
and
jump
stuff.
to the point instead of patting yourself on the back. Go ahead.
Calm down. You're the only one that's talked forever. So Einstein understands that the binary here is stationary Earth or Earth that's spinning and revolving. The spinning, the rotating and revolving is a package deal. You can't just pick one of them out, right? You need them both to explain the phenomena. So either the Earth is stationary or it's spinning and revolving. So we all know we have sidereal rotation, right? Obviously, Einstein was competent enough to understand that. The question is it the sky that's moving around the Earth, or is it the Earth making the sky look like that? So then we go to the orbit question.
How could you measure sidereal rotation of the sky moving when you're not even looking at the sky, when the apparatus is not capable of seeing the sky or having access to the sky?
Yeah. So you're measuring the movement that's connected to the movement in the sky, right? So, and Einstein knew this. That's what he's explaining in his
Hold on a
letter
second.
to Ernest Mach.
Say that again. I want to hear that again.
You're not actually measuring the sky. You're not putting something in the sky. You are
Okay.
measuring a movement
Yes.
that is connected to the movement in the sky.
So
There's
the
an overall
device is
movement.
moving. The device, the Sagnac
Yeah, like well, I think I covered in the debate. So.
effect device that Michelson, Gale, Pearson was doing, they are measuring the movement of that device.
Yeah, listen carefully. So Einstein explains in his letter with Ernst Mach, right, that you've been ridiculed for your idea, and people previously thought it was wrong. But I must now concede that for me to continue forward with relativity, I have to incorporate this principle, and that if it were in fact the sky moving around the Earth, it would drag the pendulum along, although it would be practically like immeasurably small.
There you go. Good.
Now, yeah, that doesn't refute my position. See, Bryant doesn't understand it. I would encourage you not to take pointers from him because I explained it to him in the email, but he's dishonest apparently. So it isn't that I'm invoking Einstein's interpretation of the universe or relativity. I'm invoking the principle. And the reason Einstein's brought up as a hostile witness is to cut to the chase with the ballers who, if I just brought up the principle, they would mock me and ridicule me as just making something up that doesn't make sense. So I point out to them that their own belief system utilizing relativity requires and necessitates them concede the validity of the Machian principle. Okay, that's the only reason the letter's invoked. The reason that it doesn't refute me that he said immeasurably small is I don't believe that space is a near perfect vacuum, nor do I believe that the stars are trillions of miles away, nor do I believe, wait, this last part is an important part, McToon, so you can understand.
Okay.
Nor do I believe that like in a vacuum chamber, there's just Newtonian emptiness with only space and time. Now that's what Einstein thought. So speaking from that context, he's saying it would be immeasurably small. You understand the difference.
All right. So, and how does any of this establish your claim of stationariness?
You see how he like just skate right past it, probably doesn't actually understand it. You see, just looking around laughing, trying to find a way to trigger me, but it doesn't work, right? He's like, he tries to trigger me, he starts laughing. He didn't understand anything I just said, which is I'm invoking the principle and I've used relativity tactically against you because I'm making you concede the validity in the principle that if there was stuff moving around the Earth that was stationary, it would translate motion to the Earth, right? And this would explain centrifugal and Coriolis effects on the Earth. Right now, exactly what it is and what the nature of it is and what all would it affect, that's a whole different thing. But it's the principle that's being invoked. And I've forced them into a corner where they have to concede it or they have to say relativity is wrong. And Einstein's wrong about relativity, right? So it's either Einstein's wrong about relativity or relativity is wrong or Austin is correct and the principle is valid. So it's a tactical way to win the debate and it can't be rebutted. And that's why he shifted back over to where's your proof of stationariness? When we just covered for the audience, of course, if you're attempting to detect motion and you get a negative result and you don't detect any motion, that's evidence of stationariness, right? That's the default position is that something's not moving. If you can't measure it moving, can't see it moving, can't feel it moving, have no way to detect it moving, then that means it's not moving. I'm supposed to go get a measurement of 0. It's a very stupid talking point, but he's trying to divert away from the fact that I just destroyed him and he doesn't understand it. But moving on.
That's the problem. You keep going to this, but it doesn't help you. Even if you succeed, it doesn't help you.
Well,
how else do you establish the Earth moving around the sun?
How else?
Yeah.
Simple Newtonian laws of motion and gravity.
So calculative assumption. And this is the point though.
No,
If
empirical.
Okay, let's look at it from like we're going to apply Occam's razor, that which requires the least amount of assumption. Like when we do things on the Earth, we treat the Earth like a stationary. We don't feel it. The globe does have a sufficient answer for why we don't feel it, right? That's not the point. I never make that argument, but it is the default position that we don't feel it. And it's the default position we see everything move in the sky. It's also the default position that we see a difference in sidereal and solar rotation, as if there are actual entities themselves moving independent of one another, as opposed to one singular illusionary movement, right? Illusory, whatever the word is. So that is the default position. Now, when we go
Illusory.
try to measure or detect the Earth's movement around the sun, we always get the results that we would get if the Earth were stationary. So that is what all the evidence is saying. Relativity claims that even though it looks like that, actually it's moving. And there's this stuff.
If you saw, he just typed a poll in the chat. that says, "How drunk is Witsit?" That's what he's doing during the debate while he's getting destroyed.
And Lorentz contraction that always makes it look like it's stationary.
All right. So how did that establish the stationariness?
All evidence shows us that it's stationary. Even
No.
relativity agrees.
Definitely not. Definitely,
Name
all evidence
name
doesn't.
one name
Yeah.
one piece of evidence that's exclusive to the Earth moving.
Yes, well, I will happily do that. A plastic ball was suspended by 15 Tesla magnetic field, so it's not touching anything.
I just explained to him the Machian principle explains sidereal rotation being detected on a stationary Earth, even according to Einstein relativity. He then goes back to trying to invoke different measurements of sidereal rotation. I concede that it is a very difficult position that I've put him in. There's really no way to talk his way out of it. It isn't is like a non-rebuttable. Like, I understand that, but that's not my problem. That's how you debate.
And the rotation of the Earth was measured with that. I'll get it for you.
Yeah, but you know that I'm not denying sidereal rotation, right? So the question is,
you need
what
to
is
establish
moving?
what's causing that. Yeah, what you need to establish that it's not the apparatus moving. You need that it's something else. I don't know what you think it is, but show what that is. Show the implications of it. Quantify it. Put pencil to paper to show how that prediction might happen. And then we can see.
magic show. You say
all he needs is math. With it, just give him a couple numbers, he'll be good to go.
Well, I do actually plan on working out some math, but what's funny is you would say that so arrogantly, because what would be on the table to do that is coming up with something myself intricately that it took, hundreds of years and millions of people and billions of dollars to come up with for your side. So it's
89% of the poll said I was drunk.
funny that you say it like no one can see through it. Like, yeah, I'll try to come up with some numbers for you, but what you need to concede is that the principle is valid, right? That if there was motion around a stationary Earth, it would translate motion to the Earth. And
No,
once we
not at
see that,
all.
we can-
You need to establish a mechanism for that transfer. What's the mechanism for
Machian.
that transfer?
the Machian principle and it dictates that would happen, right?
No,
So
that's not a mechanism. What's the mechanism of the transfer? If some
See, this is the point. He doesn't understand it. Even within just, if you believe the fairy tale of the vacuum of space and all this, you still have a mechanism, and that is that motion translates through a medium. That is the mechanism, right? It's like if you move your hand over a bathtub of water, and the water in the bathtub will move, even though you don't touch the bathtub with your hand. The force from your hand moves through the air and then makes the water move. Okay. If there was motion around the Earth that's stationary, it would translate motion. And Einstein explains this would drag a pendulum around, but it would be immeasurably small. He says that because he assumes that the lights are trillions of miles away, the stars are trillions of miles away in a near perfect vacuum, and that there's no background medium. So there wouldn't be a ton of motion translated from that far away with that little of a medium. But that's what he doesn't understand. He just doesn't comprehend it.
Something is moving around the Earth, then what is the mechanism that transfers that movement to a magnetically levitating plastic ball? What transfers that movement?
Oh, it transfers the movement. Well, for one, we have a medium on the Earth. Two, seemingly we have a medium in space.
You mean air?
Third, we have background energy. Like we have something called free space impedance. So it's well known that even in a vacuum chamber, there's some
free space impedance. Is you think that's going to cause something to moving the outside the Earth to cause something inside the Earth to move? Free space impedance doesn't actually do that for you, Austin.
Well, good try, but so the motion is translated through a medium, and it's well known nowadays that there is in fact a background medium.
What's it
and
called?
You don't want to accept it, but that's not really my problem. That's why your paradigm is at a standstill.
The empirical evidence supporting your claims.
Yeah.
So
okay.
It's been well established empirically that even in a vacuum chamber, you have an electric and magnetic constant, which gives you a free space impedance, and that there is background energy, and that it's not just Newtonian emptiness. And even quantum field theory tries to say that there are background fields and that everything that pops into existence comes from the background field due to the excitation within the background. It doesn't work with general relativity, so they just keep it separate. It's well known. And that's just the ether aspect of it, the background medium that would translate the motion. And of course, if you got a more dense medium in the sky, it would also translate the motion more efficiently. So he's just freaking out.
Okay. So inside of a vacuum chamber, we can measure that it has impedance, 377 ohms, and it has an electric constant and a magnetic constant, even inside of a vacuum chamber. right? We
But-
also have many different observations that show that there is energy coming from the background or becoming
All right, hold on, one at a
manifest.
time. Austin, impedance. Impedance doesn't impart movement. It's just a measure of resistivity to electricity moving through it. That doesn't impart movement.
Right. So that
How
means
is
that
that gonna
there's
impart movement?
energy in the background.
Okay, and how is that energy then? So skip over the impedance because that's nothing then, right? How is the energy going to be doing that?
The impedance is the proof of the energy, my guy.
So I'm dropping the link in the chat that you can watch the video. You can obviously go to McLooney Tunes channel, or you can go to this channel, and it should pop up in the chat. Yeah, and you can watch it because there's no way we're going to watch all, because we're already 2.5 hours in, and I think we have a lot left in this debate. But anyway, let's go.
But yeah, so there's energy.
The fact that impedance exists is not proof that
You're
there is
scared.
energy. But go ahead,
You're scared.
explain the energy and the empirical evidence that the energy you're talking about can induce something to move.
Yeah, so all we need is some type of medium to translate the motion. And Einstein points out that he could not even put relativity forward because they were about to try the Eddington experiment, and that in order to invoke the results of the Eddington experiment.
Look at him fake laughing. I'm destroying him right now. Like, again, he doesn't. We don't even need the ether because Einstein concedes the principle and says that relativity requires you acknowledge it, and we don't even need the ether for that. The ether just makes it worse, and it's obviously there.
And Einstein points out that he could not even put relativity forward because they were about to try the Eddington experiment, and that in order to invoke the results of the Eddington experiment, he had to concede the Machian principle. That's so if you could be honest, you would concede, well, okay, so then the Machian principle is accurate according to my own position as well. And then we would go forward to say, okay, well, then what would be the mechanism? So you're asking about the mechanism. So I'm guessing you are conceding it's a valid principle.
Nope. I'm just asking about the mechanism. Just
So
tell
you
me the
disagree
mechanism.
Well, that's a dishonest
Go ahead,
debate because
just
you're
jump
trying
right
to
to the
skip over
mechanism.
the concession
Just
part.
jump right over to the mechanism. Go ahead.
No, that's what you would want to do because it's a dishonest tactic to
Right, so
skip
you don't have a
over the
mechanism.
concession part.
You're
No, I
avoiding
can-
the mechanism because you don't have it.
No. I
Well,
want
then
to
what
make
is it?
sure
Then-
everyone
then
understands
tell us the
that
mechanism,
you're not
Austin.
honest. So
He's starting to get really freaked out. And he just interrupts nonstop.
if you
tell
can
us the mechanism.
concede,
Just
Oh,
tell us
we
the
get
mechanism.
that.
Go ahead.
if you'll just concede the validity of the principle, we'll go on to the next step.
No. Just tell us the mechanism, Austin.
Are you like a robot?
All right. Well, you got nothing. Got it. Okay.
Okay, so he can't answer. Just so the room clearly he sees he can't answer. I'll go ahead and let you know that he doesn't have a choice
I'm
here.
specifically
Einstein
asking
said
for you
that
to provide the
have
mechanism,
to
and he
agree with what
specifically
I'm saying.
refuses to answer.
No, Einstein said you
I'm
have to
just
agree
telling the
with what I'm
room
saying.
that he
See, he's resorted to just don't like censor Austin by interrupting him.
refuses to provide the mechanism that he says causes the inducement of the motion. He refuses to. He knows he has no empirical evidence to support his claims.
No,
Just
it's
tell
not
the room.
actually
Just
all
tell
the
the room.
empirical evidence shows that a vacuum chamber is not emptiness. So do you agree with that?
Has nothing to do with the mechanism that causes or induces rotation on an object. So go ahead.
Has nothing. He doesn't understand that literally the medium has everything to do with it. Now he's effectively asking, what's the source of the energy? Well, whatever's making everything move is the source of energy. We can't go out into space. We don't make fairy tale stories like you do. We don't have to. You have to concede the principle that if the sky's moving around the Earth, then it would translate motion to the Earth. It's very simple.
Okay, so for
Explain
one,
the mechanism for that.
you're way out of your league. But so what you're actually meaning to ask, what you're gonna have to answer first is what is the source of the motion? Period. Like what's the actual source of motion?
Yeah, you do have
period.
that burden. That is a challenge.
So that's right. That would be the first question, and that's not a very easy question to answer. Now that would require you to be intellectually honest. But
it's
we
you.
know
It's
that's
not
not
me.
gonna happen.
It's you that has the burden, not me.
It seemingly the source of energy would be in the center of the rotation, right? So close to Polaris in the visual sky. There would have to be some source of energy at that point, seemingly causing motion. It could also, the source of energy could extend all the way down. I would speculate that it is in fact the manifestation of a torus. But secondly, then you really are asking, well, what would translate the motion? Because we don't have to answer that question before we can acknowledge the phenomenon. What?
Taurus, that's people born in April. I'm not into zoology very much. Zodiac.
You don't know what a Taurus is?
I was kidding. I know it's not zoology. I'm not much for zodiac stuff.
Okay.
All right,
yeah.
go ahead.
So anyway, now we actually don't have to know precisely what the source of energy is to acknowledge the phenomena. It's kind of like your religion, how you don't really know the source of the Big Bang, and you don't know actually the source of all the dark energy that
when
you see.
have
You
I
don't
talked
actually
about Big Bang or dark energy?
Well, you see what I'm
Not my
saying?
thing.
It's
Not my
very
thing.
similar. It's very similar, right?
Yeah, that's-
You're asking me to
it's
answer a
straw man.
question about a source of energy way out.
Just so over his head, bro. It's sad, bro.
It's
Not my
very
thing.
similar. It's very similar, right?
Yeah, that's-
You're asking me to
it's
answer
straw
a
man.
question about a source of energy way out in the sky, right? I certainly cannot validate that. I could speculate, but the point is that the principle holds true. This is invoked simply to refute the claim of exclusivity of sidereal rotation on your side. You guys claim that since you can detect sidereal rotation, that can only be because the Earth is spinning, and this is patently false.
The reason why is because there's many different ways to measure that, and they all agree even though they have different ways of measuring that rotation, they all agree that the rotation is the same. It's amazing when you get lots of agreement with different mechanisms. That sure tells us a lot, doesn't it?
That doesn't change anything. We don't deny the sidereal rotation exists.
So you agree that the Earth is rotating then? Awesome.
See what he just did? I mean,
You said you
is this live
agree with
streamed?
sidereal rotation.
I think
You
this-
just
Like blatantly a straw man. Imagine that.
see what he just did? I mean,
you said you
is this live
agree with
streamed?
sidereal rotation.
I think
You
this
just
is
said you
recorded.
agreed with
Yes, sir.
sidereal rotation.
Yeah, which
yeah,
is
you said
the,
that. You specifically
yeah.
said you agree with sidereal rotation. That's the Earth rotating. You just
no,
specifically agreed with
that's
that.
what you interpret it to be. But
Okay.
sidereal rotation is the stars moving in the sky.
Yeah, but like we said, if something can't see the stars, how does the stars impact that thing?
So
haven't
once
established
again, once again, it's actually detecting the motion that's connected all the way up to the
Okay,
sky.
and
now,
how is that motion induced?
here is a Nobel
Still
Prize winning
waiting. How is
physicist
that-
explaining that.
How's that motion induced?
Okay, so there's a transfer of
Can't
energy
answer?
from the background to the material world. It's been observed many times empirically. So do you agree with
Okay.
that?
No, you didn't send any empirical measurements of it, so I gotta have to see that.
Okay, sure.
Send them.
So
Send them. Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. You don't know that, like, so quantum field theory claims, right, which is like the top tier of your paradigm, claims that there's like excitations within fields that comprise all things, right,
Okay,
and
and-
that this
but-
becomes materially manifest when in a certain modality, right. So that some people would say like when you hit it hard enough or something, right. So whenever it's excited, then it
Modality
becomes
is a
materially manifest. This is
angular
well
word.
known. This is why people are proposing new types of gravity, right, like quantum gravity.
Oh yeah. Okay. So you didn't establish the mechanism that causes things in the sky.
He has no business debating me. You see how he can't even rebut anything I'm saying. This is so bad for him. It's crazy. And he's like going around bragging on Facebook about it and stuff. It's really a crazy situation. Go read the comments. I got destroyed. I did nothing but use word salad. I don't know what the word sophistry means. Blah, blah, blah.
To make things not in the sky move. Still waiting for that.
Yeah, so there's a source of motion which is hard to pin down. Of course, it's all the way out in space or
Okay, I
sky.
didn't ask about the source. I asked about how that mechanism
I'm
gets transferred.
still
Yeah.
explaining it.
Okay.
So then everything is moving around, right? And this is translated through a medium, so a more dense medium of the sky, the medium of the earth, and those are additional mediums to the background medium as well, that is the material. All these translate the motion, and then it moves seemingly in the form of a toroid, right, or a torus, and that is detected on the earth. So that's what that, and that is of course interconnected with the motion observed of sidereal rotation.
Okay, you still didn't tell us what that mechanism is that causes the transfer of motion.
So you're asking me to answer a question that all of quantum field theory and quantum mechanics still can't answer. And
It's
this
your
is what I wanted to
position.
show
Austin,
to
this is your
this is what I
claim,
wanted
not
to
my
show
claim.
to the audience, dude. You pretend that I'm just
It's
so
not
stupid.
my claim, it's
and-
your claim.
Right, but this is what I'm saying. All the evidence shows what I'm saying is true, and we've yet to
What evidence?
even
You
within
haven't
your
cited
paradigm,
one piece of evidence yet.
even within your paradigm, we've yet to fully understand it.
Yeah, you
Now
didn't
you're
cite
basically
any
saying
evidence. Just
if
show
I'm
the
not like
evidence.
Nikola Tesla times a million, and I can't rewrite all of physics by myself on Discord right now and give you math from the quantum to the cosmological scale to explain all things, even though your entire paradigm still can't do it, then the Earth spins.
Okay,
Think
so,
about
so
how
it
dishonest
sounds
you are.
like you have a position, but you have exactly zero evidence to support your position.
No, it's not zero evidence. I just don't have to
Oh, then-
quantify
then
with
send
specific
the
claims.
evidence
All
then.
the evidence is
Of
in my favor
course,
because
of
any
course you have
attempt
to quantify any of your claims.
Think about how funny this is. Literally, my position is 100 times, 1,000 times more viable than his. His paradigm separates quantum from what's happening in the sky and says they're completely different. We can't explain it. And we can just use the convention of gravity on the earth. It works well enough. In fact, we'll just teach children mass attracting mass, even though that's been debunked within our own paradigm. And that's not even what we claim it is. And we'll just use it because it works. The math works, right? Which we can use a kinematic equation using height, time, and initial velocity, of course, to solve for downward acceleration. And then the cosmological scale and the quantum scale are completely separated. That's what their paradigm does. I'm over here talking about an idea that would unify all of it and work perfectly, and this would explain the motion. And his paradigm that he appeals to, scientists, all the scientists, the quantum physics scientists that he appeals to support my position and debunk his position, which is as if there's no background there. And all the evidence shows that there is, and it's just kept separate from relativity because DR doesn't work on the quantum scale. So I actually have all the evidence works with my proposal. None of it works with this. Think about how dishonest he's being. It's pretty funny.
You have the burden of evidence if you make the claim. You're making the claim, therefore you have the burden of evidence. This is from you. You've made a claim of specificity, Austin. You have the burden of evidence to support that claim of specificity. That's your word.
Right. So we have the same evidence, which is that we detect sidereal rotation.
No, that's not. It's the mechanism. I'm asking for the mechanism that causes the transfer of motion from the stars to objects that are not the stars and can't even see the stars.
It's
Now, here's
the
where we both have
medium.
to guess our answer effectively. You say that it's the Earth spinning. I'm saying
Yes.
that it's actually the stuff in the sky moving.
Yeah,
And there's a medium. There's a background medium that connects all of it.
But Austin, it makes perfect sense that something moving can register something moving when you create a device to measure movement. You have not yet established anything that a device designed to measure movement somehow measures
Movement.
the sky
Movement.
moving when it's not actually moving.
Yeah. So it's why we go all the way back to where I explained that there's something called the Machian principle, which is the
it's not-
translation
sorry,
of
that's not
motion
the
to the
mechanism.
interior of a system.
Austin,
And
that's not the
Einstein explains
mechanism.
Make
that
sure you interrupt, McToon. Somehow you'll win the debate.
this would drag a pendulum around.
Yeah,
So
that doesn't, frame dragging doesn't help you. It's way too small. So
Now that's where you revert back to your script, but the whole audience has heard of
By the way, anti-flat earther in the chat, there's a need for a full explanation. Okay, what's your explanation for the quantum scale within general relativity? What about the cosmological scale within general relativity? Oh, you can't explain any of it. It doesn't work at all. So I guess according to your own logic, you now have to throw out the spinning ball Earth. Dang, that's tough, man. That's rough. I guess we'll have to go back to the default position.
already destroyed the way too small part. But you can't actually debate me, right? That's why you need to stick to your straw man Austin for 2 hours on live streams.
Yeah, pat yourself on the back. I'm still waiting for the mechanism because frame dragging isn't the mechanism that answers your question. What's the mechanism that causes it? Well, if it is frame dragging, then go ahead and show the application. You don't agree with relativity, so I don't know why you bring up relativity to support your position.
Because I know that you're so dishonest, you wouldn't concede the Machian principle unless I forced you to. So I used a hostile way.
Just show your evidence.
So much. Why do Glovers do that?
Just show your evidence, Austin.
Why do anti-flatters have to
just claims?
Go ahead.
Show your
evidence. You have impulse control issues. So watch. I'll ask again, and watch. You won't answer again. Do you concede and agree with Einstein that the Machian principle is valid? Yes or no?
I'm not. No, I don't know.
Did you hear him? That's like the 5th time so far, right? Every time he gets like put into a position where he knows he has to actually answer it and debate me, he just hand waves dismiss it. Listen.
Do you concede and agree with Einstein that the Machian principle is valid? Yes or no?
I'm not. No, I don't know. Austin, I'm just keep going.
Dude. Think
What's the mechanism? What's the mechanism, Austin? You have this blind faith in that mechanism that you can't even explain what it is. You have nothing to support it. This is the same as 2 years ago when we first talked. You said instead of gravity, you wanted to use what Tesla wrote about in the paragraph or the sidebar of a book that you had no idea what he wrote about, but that was the one that you chose. You definitely wanted to go with the one that had no mechanism explained and nobody knew anything about. That was your choice over the well-confirmed, empirically verified mass attracting mass.
Okay, see, mass attracting mass is actually long outdated, of course, and gravity is no longer considered an intrinsic property of matter. And where mass attracting mass came from
Austin,
was
my
Newton.
My point was that you chose
Newton, who said that it was God that did it. So I don't know why you bring that up.
Austin,
that's so funny. But
2 years ago, you chose Tesla's writing, just saying, I have some other idea. That's the one that you said you chose to go with.
I said I currently think it would be more of an electromagnetic phenomenon. Yeah, but this is let me point this out. I'm going to set you up again.
Deal. You go with the thing that has no evidence over the thing that has evidence.
Everyone pay attention.
That you're just constantly interrupting me, dude.
To mass attracting mass, and
yes, mass attracting is confirmed. Absolutely, empirically confirmed.
You have to interrupt.
Yes,
you're nervous.
So no, I'm excited. This is fun.
You're getting destroyed though.
You almost sound like it.
Everyone's hearing it. So Newton said mass attracting mass was an act of God. Now you said that Tesla didn't. You said Tesla didn't propose a mechanism, but he did. You're just going to dismiss it as woo-woo. But he said that there was a luminiferous ether, and that there was a life-giving force he referred to as the prana within that. And when this ether was thrown into infinitesimal prodigious worlds of velocity, it manifested as matter. And that this motion within the ether acted as basically an all-encompassing medium that presses down on existence. So he did offer a mechanism. You will just hand wave dismiss it, but you will then invoke the mass attracting mass act of God. So
yeah, it is definitely woo. But
So did you see what I just did to him? He doesn't get what I just did to him. I set him up. I knew that if he tried to pull out of me what Tesla's proposal was, he would say it was woo-woo. It's like, oh, supernatural. Might as well just say God, woo-woo, right? Because he said that there's a life-giving force within the ether that creates all the motion and stuff like that. So I set him up, and because he invoked mass attracting mass, which is not what they believe anymore. They believe, it's relativity, the bending and warping of space-time. But mass attracting mass was proposed by Newton, which no one's come up with a mechanism for it at all, right? They just say mass attracting mass to this day, which is actually just the dumbed down layman term way that they teach high schoolers what gravity is. It's actually the bending and warping of space-time within the globe earth paradigm. But he says it anyway, like it's a fact. Now, the person that proposed it, Newton, he said that it was actually an act of God, that mass attracting mass, that gravity was an act of God. I set him up because he said, Tesla didn't even propose a cause claim. Newton didn't even propose a cause claim, and he actually just said it was God. At least like Tesla actually did propose a specific cause claim and mechanism. And ironically, he claims that Tesla's is woo, but Newton literally said it's God, and actually said, I don't think it would ever be possible that gravity would act on innate brew matter through the vastness of a vacuum without some type of medium exchanging the force. So please do not ascribe that to me. And in fact, I think that any man, it's such an absurdity, so great an absurdity that any man with competent faculty of thinking and philosophical matters could never fall into it. See what I'm saying? I'm like mental jujitsuing him. He doesn't actually follow it or know. He's just focused on like trying to save face for his like zealots in the chat. And so anyone that watches this and claims that I lost or got destroyed or something, they are hopeless. They are currently in a state that they cannot hear the truth, right? So that's not what this is for.
Newton's particular explanation for how it happened doesn't really matter because you can empirically verify that mass attracts mass. It's easy to do. It's not that hard. And then you can purchase your own. If you don't want to build your own,
I can't believe you can get through that without coughing or something, dude. You don't actually believe that, do you?
No, he does.
That mass attracts mass.
I've decided he does believe
100% mass attracts mass has been confirmed, empirically confirmed. And Austin, your video by Good Times for All actually supports it.
Wow,
I love that. And you didn't kind of like that one.
What are you talking about? That you're just going to name a YouTube channel like
the Good Times for All video.
Incoherent magnetism?
Yes, incoherent magnetism.
Yeah.
In the end, I loved it.
See how I always know more than I already know what he's trying to say before he says it every time.
Because you're nervous because you're walking into me knowing something way more than you do.
Because Austin, incoherent magnetism says that all matter attracts all matter. Guess what, Austin? That's still the same as mass attracting.
Yeah, but here's what you don't get. Here's what you don't get. So that's actually intrinsically electrostatic, and just because there's an attractive force, right? It's inversely proportionate to mass. Now you claim that it's proportionate to mass, so they're directly opposite of one another.
But what we verify empirically in by putting something on a spring scale is that it's directly proportional to mass.
No, you don't.
Oh no, it's not. So mass
Yeah.
and force are not directly.
See, this is what he doesn't understand. It's not like this magic force that's pulling things down to the earth that gives it weight, right? There's just actually a downward bias set, and it's the density relationship that sets the up and down. And then you have to define weight, which is actually relative to vector, magnitude, coherency, location, medium. It's all those things specific to those things. And you would have to define density, which what holds density together, because that's compactness of matter, and that's intrinsically electrostatic bonds that hold it together, even within its own paradigm. Blah blah blah. But he was definitely trying to divert away to that conversation, which would be like a 2-hour debate in and of itself, because he's running away from the other one. So we can listen to some of it, but basically all I do is like I start explaining what I just said to you to him, which is like it takes painfully long, and then I'm like, you're gonna pretend this is me being pedantic. It is pedantic. I'm like, no, see, I know all the sophistry you're gonna say, but let's move on. So I might have to move forward because it's already pushing 3 hours.
Related? How's that?
Well, it's not that they're not related. Right? But it's that your claim of an attractive force is not proportionate to mass, and of course, what you just
what's it proportionate to?
This is why I decided not to debate you anymore, because
why does the force go up when the mass goes up, Austin? If it's not directly
because you impulsively interrupt, and then when I ask you like 5 questions, you refuse to answer them, but then you expect me to answer whatever question you can come up with off the top of your head to divert to, because you're just dishonest. You're not a good debater.
Austin, you just said clearly, you made this claim that it's inversely proportional to mass. But yet it's really not that difficult for anybody to see that force goes up when mass goes up. And so I'm just waiting for you to support your claim there. That's
Right. So now we need to get into what is weight. And before we get into what is weight, this is why you're doing this, because you're drowning out the other parts, which is you claim that detection of sidereal rotation is exclusive to axial rotation, but it is not. Even Einstein himself says via relativistic application, you would have to concede if the Earth is stationary, you'd have a translation of motion that would drag the pendulum around. So then you would just concede the principle and we move on, but you're afraid to. I asked you, you're changing all the way back to gravity now, right? Because I asked you, how do you prove that the Earth, can you agree that relativity says you can't actually detect the Earth moving around the sun from the Earth? And then I gave you the quote of what he said, and that he said that before relativity was put forth, it was difficult to become reconciled with this result. I asked you, how did relativity reconcile the results? You said you didn't know. You said that matter didn't physically contract, and then you got corrected on that and skated past that. And now you point to scattergun random diversions over here to gravity.
I specifically said for contraction that within our reference frame, it doesn't. And that was always my position.
Does it physically contract overall?
Within our reference frame, I will say that it does not.
But in reality, it does. It's just our whole reference frame also contracts, right? See, you don't understand it.
Oh, I certainly do.
No, you don't. You literally don't.
Yo, he doesn't know what to say.
Don't. But does it?
I specifically said for contraction that within our reference frame, it doesn't. And that was always my position.
Does it physically contract overall?
Within our reference frame, I will say that it does not.
But in reality, it does. It's just our whole reference frame also contracts, right? See, you don't understand it.
Oh, I certainly do.
No, you don't. You literally don't.
All right, come on.
Okay, let me explain it to you. So relativity says that the whole reference frame contracts, and that's why you can't detect it. So it's not that it doesn't contract in your reference frame as much as it doesn't contract relative to your reference frame. It doesn't contract relative to your reference frame because the whole reference frame contracts. You understand that, right?
Wait, the entire reference frame contracts?
Yeah, all of space.
From an external reference frame, the entire reference frame contracts.
All of space, all observers, all measuring devices contract.
Or is it directly proportional to the part that's near mass?
This is so funny. You just don't.
Dude, talk about word salad. In the context, what he just said is literally word salad. It makes no sense at all in the context.
At high velocity.
Yeah. So like whenever you're in the reference frame that is being
affected. See, it's that it won't be really detectable unless it's moving crazy fast, but motion itself contracts matter. He doesn't understand that. So I have to teach him like using a like elementary analogy.
About Lorentz contraction, then all the space in that reference frame contracts as well. Like you could think of you being on a train and it moving, and then you have a ruler. Relativity says that ruler is contracting. If you held it up to the window to measure the window, as the ruler contracts, the window also contracts.
Just from
as does
somebody
all
outside
the space in the train. So it would look like nothing contracted in your reference frame. You understand?
Yeah, just outside the reference frame, though, as I said before.
If you were outside of it, then you would be able to measure the contraction.
Yeah, just outside the reference frame is where it contracts.
So where do we have to get to be outside the reference frame as it pertains to Earth?
Well, on the to go to the train model, the person standing on the platform.
No.
Yeah.
No. See,
no.
Outside. Yeah. See. So yeah, it would look like it's changing from outside the train, but in reality, if you try to measure it, then it wouldn't show contraction. And this is it seems like it's convoluted, somewhat convoluted, because that's your model's religion, but it is simple, and it is that you can't detect or measure the Earth's motion around the Earth. The Earth around the sun from the Earth because of time dilation and length contraction. So you'll get there though. And then when it comes to the mass attracting mass thing, you're invoking weight when you bring up the spring scale. So we have to define weights.
Yeah, mass times acceleration.
Okay, so acceleration is obviously not exclusive to what you think it is, right? It's just the effect. The question is, what's the cause?
When you're looking at a physical law, the cause is not part of it.
Right, but if you're invoking it as if to support your other claims in your model, then cause becomes a part of it.
No, it absolutely. When you're looking at a physical law, the cause is not important. For example, Snell's law. Do you need to know the cause of
Hey, does everyone remember earlier? I had to know the exact cause and mechanism. I had to know the cause, and I had to quantify everything that exists to explain the cause, or I couldn't talk about the principle at all that even relativity forces him to acknowledge. But now all of a sudden the cause doesn't matter at all, even though he's actually invoking the cause. The difference is, of course, I can actually show that that's what would happen, right? It has inaccessible information, so there's no way for me to go out into space and find the source of the energy and blah, blah, blah. But he's just blatantly double speaking, or double, like hypocritical, really.
of the refraction in order to use Snell's law? No. In order to confirm that Snell's law is in fact empirically valid, you just need to measure the refraction. You don't need to know why. So just like
Snell's law actually does have some discrepancies. I'm sure you don't know that.
And
But
just
it's arguably the best of all the options, sure. But this is the point. Weight is actually relative to many variables. And your paradigm claims that these are just additional variables to a force that's presupposed. And that's why it does come into claim in the cause, right? Because weight is actually relative to medium, to magnitude, to vector, to coherency, to location.
Hold on. Let's get this clear. Medium, yes, because buoyancy is a thing. So you're on your free body diagram, you have your
You see how he's distracting to this? So what we do here, we don't come to anything here. You can watch it. I dropped the link, right? We just start. This would be a 2-hour conversation to redefine the terms because he doesn't understand it, and I have a different opinion on what it is, right? We'll get to the relativity part again. Already 3 hours.
We're gonna get into all the weeds, right? Because I saw
you work at a higher level than that because all these things are not actually questioned.
Yeah, to density, right?
The density of the displaced material, yes.
Relative to the density.
Yeah, never mind.
So then now we need to figure
Never
out. What
mind.
density is.
We'll just play it pretty much from there because I don't want to hear anyone be like, "Oh man, you probably lost here or somehow." Well, who cares anyway? But here you go.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You see how your script is very disingenuous.
Infinite recursion. You can do it all the way to first principles. We can do all those things, right? But we don't need to because we can work at a higher level than that because all these things are not actually questioned. But
Wow,
if you want to question them all, you go right ahead. You just go right ahead.
That's why I said we were going to get into all the weeds, right? Because I saw that's where it's coming. You can seem that you can pretend it's me being pedantic or something.
It's not me being. You are being pedantic, certainly.
No, I know that it comes off like I'm being pedantic, but it's important.
It certainly does.
Distinguishment.
Absolutely comes off being pedantic, but fine.
I know. Yeah.
Question
you
all
can't
of physics down to
debate
first
me
principles. Go ahead.
Are you starting to notice that you can't debate me about it? But I would like to say though,
Keep
can you
yourself
please do
in
me
the
a favor
back there.
because just to continue in good faith, I would really prefer if you would just be honest and you would concede the first part, which is that you concede the validity in the Machian principle and that you must according to. Can you just concede that part?
I'm sorry, no.
So you disagree with Einstein?
I don't know. Whatever. Don't care.
Oh my God.
Nice. That's fair. I'll take I don't know whatever.
Bro, look, he's like he's not even trying.
Is that you concede the validity in the Machian principle and that you must according to. Can you just concede that part?
I'm sorry, no.
So you disagree with Einstein?
I don't know. Whatever. Don't care.
Oh my God.
Nice. That's fair. I'll take I don't know whatever.
So what can you do?
Completely dishonest attack.
Okay, now here I'm asked the other question that you skipped past again. Einstein said that all terrestrial experiments attempting to detect the motion of the Earth have resulted in a negative result, and prior to relativity being put forward, it was difficult to become reconciled to this result. So what did relativity do to reconcile those negative results?
I don't know. Don't care. Austin, we can measure all these things externally. So like I said, the best you do is you take one thing away of the measurement of the rotation of the Earth and the orbit of the Earth around the sun. There's other ways to do these things, and you don't move your position forward at all. You don't provide supporting evidence for your position, Austin.
Well,
why don't you actually try to go for evidence supporting your? Oh, I know why.
Well, this is the thing, right? So you're kind of being disingenuous because the whole position that you hold is that the evidence does support a stationary Earth.
No, it doesn't.
But literally, your position is that the evidence supports that the sun moves around the Earth, that the Earth is stationary, but that since relativity is true.
No, that's not my position.
No, this is objective.
This is objectively you strawmanning me. That's not my position.
No. Relativity says that although the results and the evidence appears to show us that the Earth is stationary, it's actually just an illusion.
Whatever. It doesn't help you. It
doesn't
move you forward.
So you agree with that though, right?
No, it does not appear to be stationary. It is a negative result at best. It is we don't have a result. It is nothing useful. That's what that means, Austin.
So we tried to detect motion and it was a negative result, which is what would happen if there was no motion. But the best that it gives us is that we know nothing. Wow.
It doesn't mean that it is stationary. It doesn't mean that it's evidence for stationary. It is evidence for nothingness at best.
That is so disingenuous. If the Earth was stationary, would we get a negative result? Yes or no?
If the Earth was stationary or rotating, we would get a negative result.
Now you're just begging the question of the ad hoc explanation that tried to explain why the results were negative.
Neither. It's nothing at best.
In public, he has to fake in public.
This is such a good point to learn here. Okay, this is the actual globe's position. The relativity came in and put their little ad hoc make stuff up cape on and said, "Oh, if the Earth was stationary, is what we'd get." If the Earth was moving, is what we get. Let's change it. Move the wand around. Okay, now, according to relativity, if the Earth was in motion, we would get the same thing as if it was stationary. He just admitted it.
Would we get a negative result? Yes or no?
If the Earth was stationary or rotating, we would get a negative result.
Now you're
Thanks for playing.
just begging the question of the ad hoc explanation that tried to explain why the
It's
results were negative.
neither. It's nothing at best.
In public, he has to
So-
fake his belief in public, and that's why he talks like this. He may not be being disingenuous. He wants people to believe he actually believes this shit. So
But do
who
you
knows?
see like what he's doing, right? He set up this
Oh, yeah.
narrative where even though all the evidence shows that the Earth is stationary, he's claiming it doesn't.
It
He's
doesn't
claiming
show
that we
that.
can't
No, it
use that
definitely
evidence.
doesn't show that.
It literally does. Like
All he
that's
can
what
do is
really
relativity
doesn't.
is.
It
All you
literally
need
is
to
a
know is
negative
that-
result, as Einstein said. A
Right,
negative
because
result
he
for Michelson
attempted to
Morley.
detect the motion, but got a
Using-
negative result,
using
which is what you would
Michelson-Morley.
get if the
Yeah.
Earth wasn't in motion.
You get
Why
an
do you pick this? Why do you pick this specific like part
he's-
of what
he's a-
Einstein
he's a-
said?
because I found that
He's
you
a-
guys are
a
so
cl-
dishonest.
Now here comes the other Globers trying to tag on me, like tag team on me, right? It's super funny.
Why do you pick this specific like part
he's-
of what
he's a-
Einstein
he's a-
said?
because I found that
He's
you
a-
guys are
a
so
cl-
dishonest,
he's
you
a
can't
closet
even talk about
geocentrist.
this.
He's
They
with
have to
Robert
be, dude.
Sungenis, is what he is.
No,
That's what I
no.
think.
Now he can just straw man me, right? But the reason, Platypus, is
He's
because you
constantly
guys.
bringing up geocentrism. That's his thing.
But I see.
I love it.
I'm not. I wouldn't even want McToon to be over here with us trying to figure out the true nature of the Earth, right? I
No,
don't
we
do
don't-
this
we
to
don't want
wake
you
up
back.
anti-flat earthers that
You can-
have impulse
you
control
can stay
issues and
over there.
constantly interrupt me like he's doing right now. I do this for people that are new to the subject, and I get many emails that say, "Wow, like it wasn't really you; it was how dishonest they were being that made me decide to look into it." And that's why I talk about this, because I found
All right,
that
all right.
unfortunately no baller
pat
can
yourself on
even
the back.
admit this stuff.
Pat yourself on the back.
Well, it's
Do
kind of
you
like an
have-
intellectual honesty litmus test, right? At the beginning, that's what it's kind of building up to, I think.
Yeah, and it should be like a 5-second thing, and then we get into the nitty gritty of the conversation. But I found out that it actually turns into hour, 2 hour, 3 hour long debates.
Okay. Any evidence supporting your claim? No. Got it. You never
Yeah,
do,
so-
Austin. You never even try. And you think that a negative result of an experiment is somehow evidence for your position. It's not. It's a result of nothingness. You can draw no conclusions from a negative result from Michelson-Morley.
It's just
Around the
so
sun.
dishonest.
This is so dishonest. Oh,
Yeah, think
you
about
just
it.
don't understand. You're out of your league. Come on, Austin.
You are.
Stop patting yourself on the back. Stop
Nothing.
puffing up your chest. Show some evidence.
Wait, watch. This is what he couldn't. If you
He
asked
can't.
him,
Oh,
like,
he
what
can't.
Yo, look how mad he is right now, bro.
Oh,
Yeah, think
you
about
just
it.
don't understand. You're out of your league. Come on, Austin.
You are.
Stop patting yourself on the back. Stop
Nothing.
puffing up your chest. Show some evidence.
Wait, watch. This is what he couldn't. If you
He
asked
can't.
him,
Oh,
like,
he
what would-
can't even. I'm so much
can't let me
smarter than
talk.
him.
You're
I'm
freaking
Austin.
out.
I'm so smart. You're out of my league, everybody. I'm
Why
way
are you
smarter
freaking
than
out?
everybody. Because Austin, that's what you do constantly. If you
No, I
spend
don't
half
think I'm
your time,
smarter than everybody. I
yeah,
don't
you
even
do.
think
You
you're-
constantly say you have a high IQ.
Can I talk yet?
You went around the country yelling at people on streets that you have a higher IQ than all of them.
The
This
only
seemed to have
reason I ever
turned
brought
pretty
my IQ
personal.
up on the streets is because people would say, "You're such an idiot." They would actually
yeah,
say,
I
"You
mean,
must
they
have
have a
less than an
point.
80 IQ. You must have dropped out of high school. You're a moron." So I would say, "I actually have a pretty high IQ. So if we can throw that out the window, you want to talk about the actual subject." But this is the point, right? I don't even think you're stupid. I just think that dishonesty renders a person's position stupid. And I'm trying to get you to be honest. And if you could just be honest, that'd be cool. Because if I asked you, well, then what would you suggest we do to show that the Earth is stationary? You would say, "I don't know. That's your job." And the
It
truth is
is,
that
yeah.
but if someone's competent and honest, they would know that if the Earth is stationary, then any attempt to detect motion of the Earth would be negative. You don't measure stationary. That's stupid.
You can measure stationary. Of
How
course
so?
you can.
How
'Cause
so?
rotation is absolute. Linear motion is relative, but rotation is absolute, Austin.
How do you measure stationary?
Measure for rotation, and if you get none, then it's stationary.
Oh my gosh. He came back and said, I said, well, then how do you measure stationary? He said, attempt to measure for rotation. And if you get none, then it's stationary. Bro, orbit is rotation around the sun. You attempted to, we attempted to measure that and we got nothing. So it's stationary according to McLooney Tunes. Sidereal rotation measurements don't help us determine this because we know that the sky looks like it's moving. So either the sky has movement within it or the Earth is moving and the sky is actually stationary and just looks like it's moving and we're moving, but we can't feel it. Okay. That's the only way. It's either one of those two, right? So that doesn't, we need another test of movement. You claim it's orbiting. He said that a negative result is not evidence of stationary And then when asked how you would get measurement of stationary, he ridiculed me and said, yeah, you can measure stationary, ha ha ha. And his example was you attempt to detect rotation, and if you don't detect it, then it's stationary. It's hilarious, bro.
So when we measure for orbit, we get none.
Oh, I said rotation, not orbit.
Orbit is a rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for playing.
Yeah. So the reason why
we get none
for rotation is absolute, Austin.
Yo, I gotta put it back on normal speed for a second.
Measure stationary. That's stupid.
You can measure stationary. Of
How
course
so?
you can.
How so?
Rotation is absolute. Linear motion is relative, but rotation is absolute, Austin.
How do you measure stationary?
Measure for rotation, and if you get none, then it's stationary.
So when we measure for orbit, we get none.
Oh, I said rotation, not orbit.
Orbit is a rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for playing.
Yeah. So the reason why
I'm just so done right now, bro. This dude's just like shut down. It was like a robot just shut down, bro. He said, yeah. And you look at his eyes, you can see he's like, oh man, I don't know what to say. So he's just gonna change the subject. I gotta let's do it one more time. It's really funny.
Stationary.
measure for rotation, and if you get none, then it's stationary.
So when we measure for orbit, we get none.
Oh, I said rotation, not orbit.
Orbit is a rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for playing.
Yeah. So the reason why
Yo, you see the inhale? He's like, watch what he, sorry, one more time. You just watch him. Watch when he inhales. That's when he realizes he messed up.
then it's stationary.
So when we measure for orbit, we get none.
Oh, I said rotation, not orbit.
Orbit is a rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for playing.
Yeah. So the reason why the reason why Michelson-Morley can't measure it is because it's not designed to do that. It's not capable of doing it. But Michelson-Gale.
So he disagrees with Einstein, who says that they did make even though it's really, really small, they came up with a way that it would be detected. And he says that it should have been detected. How dare you? This is why to even defend his position, I'll keep saying, well, what did relativity do to reconcile that problem? No, they didn't. I don't know. It's so bad. It's so bad.
Can measure orbit as long as you use an external reference frame, because again, linear position is relative. So you need an external reference frame in order to measure the rotation using the Sagnac effect. Michelson-Gale-Pearson can, as long as you use an external reference frame, like how long it takes for the sun to return to the same point in the sky.
Oh, so beg the question. So Michelson-Gale-Pearson doesn't detect orbit. That's not what it's designed to do.
No, it's not.
Right?
It measures rotation. Yeah, but you can.
That's right.
Using an optical gyroscope, you can measure the orbit of the Earth by referencing a fixed position like the sun.
So this is 38 years after Michelson-Morley, and it's entirely irrelevant to what Michelson-Morley was trying to do. And yeah, it matches the sidereal rotation prediction within 98% accuracy. And that's because, of course, the 15 degrees per hour isn't exact. It's a convention we use for time, and it actually fluctuates in between that 98 and 100 percentile. But yeah, it matches it. And so the question actually is, and I think you and Bryant have finally tried to come up with an answer for this. So I'll applaud you for that. Most Globers have run away, and I guess it is 2022. But let's see if you can explain to the room and see if they buy it. So if we use interferometry and we could detect the sidereal rotation within 98% accuracy of the prediction, then why can't we use interferometry to detect the orbit?
I just explained it. I just specifically said that. Did you miss that?
I want you to explain it specifically to the room where everyone can understand.
Dude, he just explained that. Yeah, you said rotation. Basically, you're saying rotation can't be detected. Like, and you don't have an external reference frame. At the beginning, at the very first question asked to you, you said that you can detect the Earth orbit from the Earth. And then you said you need an external reference frame. And then I said, oh, you just begged the question because you just look at the sun. And if the sun moves, you're like, oh, that's because we're moving and the sun's sitting still. That doesn't directly measure it, though. He's completely contradicting his own point.
And I want you to say it.
I'll do it again.
Right, he just did.
Yeah,
He just did.
yeah, so you can use because the Earth is not tidally locked to the sun. You could if it was tidally locked, but since it's not, we have to use an external reference. So
You said the sun isn't stationary in their model. Okay. Actually, the sun allegedly rotates, but it is stationary relative to the Earth. And we are moving, and it makes the sun look like it's moving. That is their model. Yeah, it flies through space 500,000 miles per hour, but relative to the Earth, it's stationary. So yes, it is stationary in their model.
say midday to midday, and you can measure the rotation with that as your reference point if you have a fiber optic gyroscope or potentially any other measurement of rotation device, provided it's sufficiently accurate.
You could detect orbit that way?
Yeah.
So you would have to go to the moon.
No, you could just
Yeah, you would.
you could just use the sun as a reference.
Using the sun as a reference is
Yes.
can you drop the paper where they measure the orbit of the Earth from the Earth, please? Because you're
Like I
making
said-
stuff up.
Like I said, you could use a fiber optic gyroscope or any other measurement device, provided it's precise enough. And you could go from sun, middle of the day to middle of the day, over and over and over again, and you can get your position movement from that.
Assuming that the Earth is orbiting the sun but can't be detected from the Earth, we can look out in the sky and then see the sun moves and say, oh, that must actually be because the sun doesn't move and we move. Wow. Wow.
Wow. So seeing the difference in the sun shows you that we're moving.
You asked me how it could be done within the model of the globe orbiting the sun, and I answered you. That's how.
Well,
you
No, actually, the question was, do you concede relativity says you cannot prove the Earth is moving around the sun from the Earth? That was the actual question.
Doesn't actually detect it, right? So Michelson-Morley was way more advanced than that, right? Like at the time, they were like, "Wow, the orbit is only just under 20 miles a second, and that's gonna be really hard to detect."
I was
But
talking
then
about.
he invented interferometry, which was very precise, and their device and apparatus was sensitive enough to detect 2 miles a second. It was like a big deal, right? It was a really like earth-shattering invention, interferometry. So then they used it to detect it. Your answer would actually need to be to actually detect it independently without begging the question by just looking at the sun. And even though the sun moves, you assume we're moving.
Oh,
you
you
would need to
added
go
those.
to the
You
moon.
added those
If you went to
conditions.
the moon, if you went to the moon, like in Artemis, or you
I didn't add those conditions. The first question I asked you was from the Earth.
are up there about to go to the moon in I guess 2024. If they would set up a Michelson-Morley experiment on the moon, then they would, in principle, be able to detect the orbit of the Earth.
That's not what I said at all. I don't know why you went there.
So do you agree?
To the question whether or not the motion of the Earth can be made perceptible in terrestrial experiments, we've already remarked that all attempts of this nature led to a negative result. Which is, of course, again, the part that you're afraid to concede. And this is just to show all the people new to the subject that the most experienced people in this debate for the anti-flat Earth side, they can't even understand or acknowledge the actual position. It would be beneficial to you to actually fully digest and understand it before believing it. It has drastic philosophical implications.
Or disagree?
No, hold on. I think Toon laid out specifically why that wouldn't work for the moon. I think the difference would be, just a case in point, it's because the moon is tidally locked to the Earth.
That's why it would work, Platypus.
Yeah.
Do I
so-
have that backwards?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If the Earth were tidally locked to the sun, you wouldn't need to reference that. You could just do a straight measurement. But since the Earth is not tidally locked to the sun, then you need to use the sun as a reference point.
Yeah, so the problem with that is that doesn't really help us like detect or measure anything. It's we're just like looking at. We all know the sun moves in the sky. The question,
Just to clarify, what that means is if you're on the moon, you'd be able to detect the like motion of the Earth, like the rotation, not its orbit. Of course, the moon is being dragged through space with the moon. I mean, with the Earth in their model, right? But yeah, you get it. Because like you could do Michelson-Gale-Pearson on the moon and see what happened, basically. But you can't
is
go
it
there, obviously.
Really stationary relative to us, and it just
specifically-
looks like
You
You have a problem.
specifically asked me how you could do it within the globe model, the globe orbiting the sun model, and I answered
I didn't say that.
Okay, now I can tell you how we can measure orbit in other ways.
I didn't say that. I said from the Earth.
Using interferometry or things that are independent.
It's
of
literally all
special
about this
relativity
right here.
or
Wait, can you
general
drop a
relativity.
paper for that though first, so we can all look at it? Can you drop a paper where they claim they used a gyroscope to measure the orbit of the Earth?
I didn't say that they did. You asked if it was
Oh.
possible, and I explained how it's possible.
So it's never been done.
I don't know if it's ever been done, but I
Why don't you go
specifically
get your Nobel Prize?
you specifically asked me if it was possible, and I specifically told you how it could be done.
Then why don't you go get your Nobel Prize? Because that would be earth-shattering that
Why-
someone's
why
come up
would-
with a way
why
to
would
measure
that-
the orbit of the Earth from the Earth and debunked relativity.
That would nobody would care about that. The orbit of the Earth around the sun has been well established. Nobody would give any Nobel Prize for that.
No one would care if relativity was debunked. So the problem here is
So
that
behind.
you objectively can't measure the orbit of the Earth, and you have a dishonest scripter here
No,
saying, "Where's your
Not
measurement
at
of
all. You
stationary?"
objectively
Can any baller in here be
said that
honest enough to
incorrectly.
admit that you couldn't measure the movement of stationary, and that the actual evidence for it being stationary would be negative results and attempt to detect motion?
no.
If you want to quote Baller to be cut to
Now this is literally. I said, would any baller in here want to be honest that it would you can't measure stationary, and evidence or stationary would be a negative result in an attempt to detect motion? He said, no, it's not. And literally just a second ago, he said, devise a way to detect rotation, and if it's negative, that's evidence for stationary. And of course, an orbit is a rotation. So he's just blatantly double speaking. Then another glober comes in here and tries to like drown the conversation out in sophistry.
come in here and be honest about it. Let's just pick up rate. Is
So they
If it's just pointed out that
be able to do that.
prove the orbit. That's why he was attempting to find sidereal and solar rotation differences. See, this is, Einstein obviously knew that, and he wasn't so stupid that he would ever claim that proved the orbit. That's why he was attempting to find a different type of experiment that would actually directly measure the movement, which is what we're talking about. We're not talking about looking in the sky and making assumptions. We're talking about directly measuring the movement. Now, an honest baller would say, according to relativity, you could never do that from the Earth. And then we would move on. But it seems that if you ever have to concede to a flat earther, it's like a nightmare
Austin,
for you.
I just showed you how you could do that.
And that isn't a terrestrial experiment, is it? Looking into the sky and assuming we're orbiting doesn't directly measure the Earth's moving from the Earth. That's not a terrestrial experiment. That's a celestial observation with presupposition. Duh.
I just
And
explained
then he
it.
says it again.
I just explained how it's possible.
It'd be their worst nightmare.
That's not a direct measurement of movements
Couldn't be
of
bothered.
the Earth, though.
Why not?
Because you're looking at a difference in rotation of the sky.
How's
and
that not
assuming the cause of that
Yeah,
difference? It's the same thing with
within- yeah,
parallax.
within the paradigm of the globe?
Well, if
this-
we're
Within the paradigm that you're challenging, if you please let me have it and presuppose and reify it, then I can look at the sky and make up a story of the cause, because I can't actually directly measure with the terrestrial experiment, but I'm not intellectually honest enough to concede that.
That's
trying to
the
test
first
the paradigm of the
fir-
globe.
No, Austin, you this is all asked within the context of that paradigm. So you're trying. So what you
Let me
did
repeat it.
is you're going into the paradigm, including relativity. When you go relativity, orbit of the Earth around the sun, you are within the paradigm, and you're like, how could you measure that? How could you measure that
Direct
orbit?
measurement.
No, I'm saying admit what relativity says and actually absorb your paradigm correctly so we can actually begin a debate. But you can't do that. You don't understand it.
How is
of
that not?
motion.
How is that not a direct measurement?
It's not a direct measurement of motion
Okay,
of the Earth.
so you move the goalpost, you change the thing to
No.
demand.
I moved the goalpost by talking about measuring the motion of the Earth. That's literally the first question I asked you.
direct measurement, and you've
No.
narrowly defined what a direct measurement is.
No, I
Got it.
explained this the whole time, which was this is what the whole conversation was about. Einstein was talking about how Michelson-Morley eventually made him come to the realization that you couldn't directly measure the orbit of the Earth around the sun. And so he was trying to come up with an explanation as to why they were all futile pursuits, and they always seemed to point to the Earth not moving around the sun. And then he came up, that's literally what it was. And then he came up with
not his
special
words.
relativity. So, and
that's
what
not
he
his words,
did
that's
was,
your
of course,
interpretation of his
incorporate the Lorentz contraction. So when I ask you, when Einstein says that all attempts terrestrially to detect the motion of the Earth around the sun, you think Einstein didn't know about sidereal and solar rotation? Of course he knew about that. He's talking about directly measuring it with an experiment on the Earth, and he says there's no experiment, no terrestrial experiment that can
All right.
measure
Well,
or
so Stuart Christmas says my PhD was in high precision interferometry.
So
This
now we're
is
just changing the
basic.
subject. There's a little bit left, but we're at 3 hours and 15 minutes. It only gets worse from at the end. I think there's only a few minutes left, but I'm like pretty tired. I'm tired of sitting here watching this. I'm sure you guys might be. I'll drop the link. Like I said, you can go to that dude's channel if you want to, or you can also go to my friend's channel who hosts these debates. So he hosted FTFE and McToon, and so I would suggest everyone going and subbing, showing my dude some love. Go sub this. This will have some of the like unexpected, not fully planned or publicized debates. Like I wasn't gonna like really publicize that debate if I had a tight shirt. I agreed as a friend to the guy that runs this server. I wasn't going to like plan a debate with McLooney Tunes. I just saw him and decided to call him out for his video we covered, which I could cover that whole thing. And I saw some people asking me to do that. Maybe we'll have like a reaction video once a week or something. But anyway, there you go. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Basically, I never get links to Patreon, although I paid. What do you mean? You never get links to Patreon? I don't know what that means. If you go to Patreon, then you'll have the Patreon only stream up there. There's only one that's been posted. What's the Discord? It's called like 24/7. I don't know. The other one got deleted, so let me see what the name of this one is. Cosmology Tartaria 2.0. Cosmology Tartaria 2.0. I will see if I can invite you. Invite. Copy it. It only lasts for 7 days. It's in the chat. There's a link to the Discord. All right, cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Basically, what it comes down to is obviously that like it's all a bunch of dishonest tactics. And I think this is important. The reason I do this is because people get trapped up in listening to people like that, and you see how like illusory confident he is, and how he'll cast a spell on the viewer and he'll lie. We covered him and Bryant like just lying. And it's like, oh well, Bryant used to be a professor in physics. Oh, McToon is an engineer and he's so smart and they know so much more about it than the stupid flat earthers. So they sit there with arrogance and they talk down and they pretend they have all the evidence and we just don't understand basic principles. But it's all lies and straw mans, and they don't understand most of it, ironically. Even though twice my age, not twice my age, but like significantly older than me with all kinds of experience and credentials and blah, blah, blah. And then they have the whole like world on their side of consensus, and then they still can't actually debate it. That's because they're covering a lie. And if you cover a lie, you have to lie. You have no choice but to lie, because truth will always win. Truth will always come to the light. So when you cover a lie, you're going to put yourself in this tough situation where you begin to have to lie and use fallacious arguments and be dishonest and mislead and be a sophist, right? Where you're like trying to twist the whole situation around. And so it's just to expose that. And I think some people would have learned like more exactly. If you watch this video, you learn more about exactly what relativity says and how in context it just makes my point even stronger, makes our point even stronger. And then what I'll do in the future, I will do a stream that'll be like 2-3 hours long, where I'll just go through, I'll make a slide. It'll take some time to really make a good presentation in a slide, but that where we really explain relativity and the relevance of all this, like Michelson-Morley and relativity. I'm going to also try to edit and create a short video explaining Michelson-Morley and relativity, like under 5 minutes or something, that you can share to your friends and make it really well edited. So there you go. Because I think it's important that instead of like worrying about low vibrational people like that, it's just the information that's important. I'm showing you how fallacious like their all-star is and how easy it was to debate him when you know the truth. And just you'll see some of the dishonest tactics. So that's why I was covered. I think we should just elevate, equip ourselves with knowledge, and continue to like take steps up where we don't, there's no reason that we should be giving too much of our energy towards people negative like that. That's why I've ignored them for like 3 years. And I've had the realization that it's kind of like my burden, where I've got a headache a little bit right now from watching that. I get a headache from the debates and stuff like that, but it's kind of like the bullet I have to take for the team, so other people can try it. Like a lot of people tell me they learn watching these debates and watching me cover them and stuff. So, you know, I'd rather kind of use one of my gifts the creator gave me to try to spread the truth and like help other people out, even if it's kind of inconvenient. I think that's kind of what life is. Like, you know, suck it up. And then part of me does enjoy debating, you know, like I enjoy talking about the physics and the conversations and stuff. So it's whatever. So there's that. If you want to support the channel, links in the description. Cool. and I'll check my PO box here soon. I haven't been there yet, but I'll go check my PO box. This is it. PO Box 171433, Spartanburg, South Carolina 29301. I'm working on the website. We got to get the business started, so got to pay for the business and get it started so we can fully launch the apps and then get all that designed in the website and stuff like that. If you want to contact me, witsitgetsit@gmail.com. You can also sign up to be a patron, and you get DMs there on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witsitgetsit. We do a Patreon exclusive stream once a week on Sunday nights, appears to be. So I'll maybe doing 3 streams on Sunday, which is crazy. But like Biscuits and Gravy, Globe Busters, and then the Patreon only stream. We'll see. And there's that. We're still working on getting all the final shows and all kinds of different stuff. I'm just super busy, but there you go. I think that technically Thanksgiving is tomorrow, right? So happy Thanksgiving or whatever. I don't think that eating good food with your family is bad or anything. I don't know much about it, to be honest. I don't know much about it. If it has like a dark pagan history or something, but obviously the feasts are actually going to be, like the real like frequency of the earth and the sky and all that, and the energies coming from the sky, which would be like seemingly the source, the creator, right? That would be the best times to do certain things. People call them feasts, so like festivals, whatever you want to call them, gatherings, Moadim, which means appointments. So anyway, cool. I just totally diverted, but I love you guys. Thanks for kicking it. Seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. And yeah, if you want to support the channel, $Witsit gets it on Cash App or paypal.me/innerworld or witsit@protonmail.com. Thanks for all that help in advance. I love you guys. I should just say links in the description, right? Like real ones know. Support which like or goes away. I love you guys. And I will catch up with you maybe tomorrow. Maybe tomorrow night I'll do a stream. And then we got some more debates coming on some channels. I'll let you guys know what it is. A lot of people want me to keep debating, so I guess I will. I guess I'll do it for you. So anyway, I'll catch up with you guys later. Like I said, seek and speak truth unequivocally. The weak find contentment in the consensus of ignorance. Basically, weak-minded people are always going to want to fit into the crowd, and even whenever it's not true. And so it doesn't really matter, right? Just follow the truth and speak it once you find it, no matter what. And the truth is not popular, and what is popular is not true. So you're going to get attacked. And whenever they revile you for his name's sake or for the truth's sake, rejoice, because they do it to all the prophets before you. That's actually confirmation you're doing what's right. Till then, I'll catch up with you next time. Peace.
Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers acting say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up, had to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Took the way you saw the world, then distorted it. Now you think you wanna rock it, twirl somewhere orbiting. Theories disproportionate, the truth distorted quick with a forceful grip. They force a misinfo that we absorbing quick. Took the people's signature that mean extorted it. They forging it. If news ain't good informants who informing them. There's a surplus, but they tell us there are shortages. Credit economy mortgages, dollar that's supported with empty fortresses. But what's important is this: we porting ships important. Yes, of course it is, but extortion is in accordance with an assortment list of foreign tricks. We ignoring which informant this, informant this. It looked like we were snoring tricked. Pedophilia and the government endorsing it. Yeah, eugenics is exactly what abortion is. You just vilify those insubordinate. Way to matrix engineer, that's unfortunate. Geopolitically, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real? Rappers actors say they high, say they simple pills. Glorify suicide so they get the deals. Big pharma set it up just to flip the pills. Control the music industry until the scripts get filled. Geopolitically, yeah, we in a field that's for Israel. Wonder, is it real?